Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and The Fool.
I haven't played any of the Metal Gear Solid games, but what I understand from them, they're quite deep games about the struggle between humanity and technology.
Yeah.
And so Snake is the perfect human, but and so he's the greatest soldier there is on Earth. And so it would make sense they don't want to clone him a bunch. So they
clone Big Boss.
Yeah. So they can have this greatest soldier. But Metal Gear is designed to be greater than any human could be. And so Snake fights Metal Gear and he wins.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what defines him as still humanity's final triumph. But this is early prototype Metal Gear, essentially.
Yeah.
So this is humanity's final triumph against machinery before machinery finally takes over.
Yeah.
And then the series with Raiden, I think he's called, which takes place like 50 years in the future or something. He's the guy with he's like a cyborg.
Yeah, with the weird jaw.
Yeah, and
he's from the earlier games.
He's way more powerful than Snake.
Yeah.
And he's the one that, well, I think he might be the one where, I don't know enough, but I think he might be the weapon to surpass Metal Gear, like the fusion of man and machine.
Well, when he fights Senator Armstrong's in a Metal Gear, and he beats the Metal Gear that Armstrong's in.
But Armstrong also has the cyborg technology, from what I understand.
Well, he's got nanobots or something.
Oh yeah, nanomachines.
Yeah, nanomachines that harden.
Yeah.
No, I've watched all of Armstrong's talking points in that fight, and they're hilarious. Like, that game is so ridiculous. Like, there's this scene that sort of stuck in my head where Jack, the cyborg, throws Senator Armstrong, and so he lands, and he's standing backwards, and then the cyborg calls him an idiot, and so he looks in between his legs at the cyborg, and it's just like this ridiculous shot in this extremely serious fight against a terrifying enemy. It's just so silly.
The games are very silly, and Kojima also...
Well, he stopped working on them after number 4.
Yeah.
He is supposed to stop working on them after number 2, but then they did 3 and 4, and so he reluctantly worked on those. And people have said those are 2 of the best written and best gameplay-wise games that Kojima ever made, because he didn't want to make them. Like, especially number 4, a lot of people really liked.
It's 4 or 5 supposed to be the best in the series, right?
I think it's 4.
It's the open world one.
Yeah, I think that's 4. I'm not 100% certain. That could be 5, but...
The one where you can stick balloons on people and have them fly up into the sky.
In 4, basically, all the Snake clones die. And Big Boss dies as well.
He's a very interesting game developer because you can only focus on so many things when you make a game. And the things he chooses to focus on are very weird.
Yeah.
Like, cigarettes will hurt you. And there's a guy who... He died. This was very recently, like 2 years ago. He died in a way that no one had ever died before in the game, and recorded at the very least, or talked about online.
Yeah.
And there was a unique animation for it, because he thought it might happen, which was, if you're in this room full of poisonous gas, if you tried to use your box in there instead of just running through the room with your respirator on or something.
I feel like that, given what happens to Snake in the game, so he's being infected with this horrible virus, and he's also aged a whole bunch, and then basically after number 4 ends, it's not determined how much time passes before he dies, but he does die very quickly after game end. Like, if you had the in-game clock run long enough, I feel like Snake in the final game should die, because he has like accelerated aging, a horrible virus, and lung cancer.
I mean, maybe he does.
Because there's that sniper that dies. What I didn't know about the games is the very first Metal Gear game, super simple pixel game that was like a DS one. Or maybe not the Xbox.
It was for the PlayStation.
Yeah, PlayStation, but still super simple pixel, like wasn't even 3D, and you basically jumped out around corners, punched guys, and then hid back around corners.
Do you ever plan to play all the games?
No.
Because there's a huge spoiler for, I think, the 3rd game. So all the enemies in Snake games are very unique and very interesting. Like, there's a guy that can control bees, and there's the ancient sniper, and you have to... So all the fights are really interesting because you have to avoid a sniper, or you have to figure out how to deal with this massive swarm of bees, or you have to fight a Metal Gear. So there's a guy who's he's like a necromancer. He controls the ghosts of the dead, essentially.
Okay.
And he uses them to haunt people. And so what happens is, every single character you've killed up to the point when you fight him starts appearing in front of you as you walk down. I think you crawl through a sewer or something to get to him, and they start appearing just to make you feel bad about killing them, essentially, as you go towards him. And because you can be totally non-lethal in the games, or mostly non-lethal, but every single person you kill appears, like every unique character. I mean, not unique, like every single just random guard, they will appear. It's like Solstheim and Skyrim, except Skyrim only does that for unique characters or something, I think. There's a mod that makes Skyrim do it, but apparently it
can break the game.
You need a patch to allow you to have more than 256 actors at a time.
Yes. There's actually apparently a very funny thing in one of the games. So Raiden's the cyborg. Yeah. But he wasn't always a cyborg. In one of the games you actually play as him when he's not a cyborg. And your ally is Solid Snake. And he's pretending to be someone else. But there's always hints that he's Snake and he looks a bit like Snake. Then at one point in the game, when you're doing a stealth mission, and so he's meant to be a seal, Snake's person pretending to be. So you're creeping along, and you see this box moving, and Solid Snake is underneath the box, stealthy along, and so that's like meant to be the biggest giveaway. It's like, what? Why is it? And like, why is it a helpful NPC?
Did you see
in a box?
The ad for Death Stranding Enhanced Edition or whatever it was?
No.
So it showed the guy from Death Stranding, I forget his name, and he's sneaking through this warehouse because there's these like mercenaries or something in there, and he's looking around. And he comes to this giant box, and he grabs it, and pulls it down, and it's full of oranges, and he chucks them out, and he jumps into the box, just like this sort of hero, like, wah! And he jumps into it with his arms around his knees, and he sits there, and then he gets out, just shakes his head, puts the box back.
I feel like a fun Easter egg you could have in some game is like, no RPG, you go around breaking a bunch of stuff, just in some warehouse, in one box, cardboard box ticket, if you break it, a super powerful enemy will pop out and basically one-shot you with like a chokehold, then run off. Then when you reload, if you attack that box again, it's no longer in there.
Did you ever see Seth's review for, I think it was for Dark Messiah Might of Magic, but it might have been for Ars...
I think I've seen both.
Ars Fortuna or whatever it's called.
Ars Cybermancy?
No, not I Divine Cybermancy. The other game by was it Looking Glass? I don't remember. Whoever made... Arcane, I guess, but this was before Arcane was Arcane, I think. Yeah. So the pickpocketing he goes through, how every time he tried to save scum the game, and every time he reloaded, the game was different, and it got worse and worse and worse until the NPC he was trying to pickpocket just vanished permanently from his save file.
Well, that'd be kind of an interesting thing to do to games. Is like you get killed in a reload system. Is those are gone permanently, and that would drive some players insane.
I find it really interesting when games have sort of runaway variables.
Yeah.
I talked about Luigi when Romney was here. How it took ages to figure. Like, there is no actual proper coded reason for why Luigi's sometimes way stronger.
Yeah.
But people have slowly figured it out from the sort of superstitious worshipping side, like scientifically figured it out. Another example, which is just kind of silly, is the kissing mod for Skyrim is for some reason based on your save file, I think it is. And so the more mods you have, the more ridiculous the kiss becomes. I think you've seen that before, right? MXR did a thing on that where his kiss became some sort of like takedown where he wrapped them and slammed them into the ground.
Yeah.
And I like it when... That's probably a sign of something's really horribly wrong, but it's very funny.
Yeah, but doing that purposely to save files of like basically quantum interactions sort of things, like this is only observable once, so you better succeed your first time around or it's gone forever, or you have to completely restart the game.
So I had something happen to me in RimWorld recently. So I have the mod SRTS, which is the spaceship mod.
Just quick note on RimWorld, your mods overrode my mods, and so I tried to reload game and everything broke. And it's just because of weird cloud sharing.
Oh, because I turned cloud sharing on briefly to try to fix something, and then I turned it off. That's
I think that's might have what happened, because all my mods got overwritten in the workshop.
Oh, even though you're... Wait, how does that make sense?
I don't know.
Because you have RimWorld on your own account.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
So you switched to my account to do Battle Brothers or something.
Yeah.
And then...
It loaded all your mods.
It downloaded my mods to your thing. Actually, yeah, that makes sense. So it probably downloaded my mods.
Yeah.
And then they went into your load order. So you still have all your mods. It's just... My mods got in there. My mods might have broken yours.
Yeah, no.
I also have a lot of mods.
Yeah, no, it's very messy because I had a lot of mods, but the game warns you basically this is not all the mods. And just what? Why did this happen?
Yeah. So SRTS is like a spaceship mod.
Yeah.
So you get into these drop pods essentially, but they're spaceships and you can relaunch them over and over again. There appears to be a glitch, or maybe it's a feature, but I think it's a glitch, where you send out your ship and because I wanted to attack a place. So I sent my ship to land in the center. And it was a mountain in the center of the map. So it loaded the map, and then it just unloaded the map and said caravan lost.
Yeah.
It didn't even say caravan lost. It just deleted my colonists. And I'd sent all my colonists but one. And so I thought, wow, that sucks. Okay, and I have permadeath on.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'll just, Alt F4. So I was like, okay, I'll just Alt F4 and everything will be okay. And the moment I had that thought, the little autosave thing popped up on the screen, and so within 1 second of it deleting all my colonists, it autosaved and got rid of them all. However, Tynan is, not insane, and I thought he might have done this. I really hoped he had. So I went into the save folder, and how RimWorld saves work is it deletes your old save, and then it takes your current autosave, and it renames it to autosave old, and then it makes a new autosave. So there's always 2 saves.
Yeah.
So you can always have an extra 24 hours to go back in case of a horrible glitch or something.
Yeah.
So that was very fortunate.
Yeah, actually, I just recalled I have one of your save files because I have colonists that, in a manner, you named them, which I don't.
Huh.
So that was also weird.
That is very weird.
But they're on my file. I wasn't playing yours.
Huh. Yeah. Well.
Because I still had the Catgirl Imperium save file on my game.
Oh, yeah. I actually lost that. It got horribly corrupted. I don't have that one anymore. But it was getting crazy. I don't know which one, because I had 2. Because I tried to remake it.
I have a bunch of your save files.
Yeah, I don't have any of my save files.
Yeah, no, it's very odd.
Yeah, but yeah, I ended up with, how did that end up going? The Catgirls were immune to something. So I was trying to convert everyone to Catgirls. And then I decided to, was it the one that I renamed it like, it was like the Imperium of Uwu or something.
It wasn't called that, but it was just called like Catgirl something.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it was the one I did properly. I don't remember. And I also had Oscar Obnoxious, so you're probably not even playing what I was playing, because Oscar Obnoxious edits your save, your rules of your game as you play.
Yeah. Anyways, my 2 save files in RimWorld games that I was playing, they're gone. But I'll just start a new game.
Yeah, that sucks.
It happens.
Yeah. I really don't like this cloud sharing feature. Mm-hmm. Even if I have, what I'm really scared about is, I have 2 computers I'm using, right?
Yeah.
And if one of those overwrites the other one, that'd be really annoying too.
Well, I beat Dead Cells, and it broke because I beat it by doing Steam share, and so I have to start playing on your account. I haven't beaten it again because you beat a game, and then you're like, well, you almost beat a game, and then that save that was lost, and you're like, oh, come on.
It's very weird, the mentality of internet connection.
Yeah.
Because first of all, most places in the world still don't have stable internet connection.
Yeah.
The places that do have stable internet connection, a lot of them they can't handle the data limits or the speeds necessary for this sort of thing. And then even all of that, the internet is very far from perfect. And the AIs that are choosing which save to overwrite what, they're very far from perfect. And you want to connect everything, like you want to connect your fridge and your phone and your computer and have them all interact, and then something goes down and you can't use them. And it's...
There's in airplane engineering, before they added computer systems, there was a mentality of designing systems so they actually were independent of each other. So if one thing broke, you could use your other instruments.
So if your autopilot breaks, you can still glide to the ground.
Yeah.
Or if your engine explodes or something.
Yeah, well, even they had independent engines. So I'm not 100% sure, but certain cars that have like 2 motors running or like a big engine, all their parts are a little vulnerable. If like one breaks, it can mess with everything. But in a big airliner, they can fly on about 1 engine.
But now if Microsoft puts out an update for one of their controllers, the 747s will all crash and fall out of the sky.
Yeah.
That's another thing I don't like, is friend and I, we love playing Xbox games together. We very rarely have a chance to do it. And whenever we want to, there's always some massive update that we can't do because it'll take a day or 2.
Yeah.
And it'll take a month's worth of data. So we just, we can't play on the Xbox. Because the other thing is, it doesn't let you use the old files.
No.
That might be security, but why is that security? It's a console. Just don't have it connect to the internet.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be secured. It's.
Or just use Nintendo's encryption.
I was actually thinking about cryptocurrencies and what's Nintendo's encryption?
Nintendo was incredibly hard to online hack.
Ah, well, sort of. They ban you if they detect you hacking. But...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a whole bunch of Nintendo safeties for their online stuff.
So yeah, but so Nintendo, their Switch has every time it updates, it sends an electrical surge through its circuit board to fry a pin that, like, it fuses it, so physically fuses it using electricity. And that prevents any sort of hack attempt reverse engineering that software. And so you'd have to do it from that software, and then they do another update and fry another pin. And
that's like
it's kind of annoying because
they're hardware updating and software at the same time.
But they're damaging your Switch to prevent it from being hacked. And hacking in general is positive, I think, personally, because it's people enjoying something that they own and doing what they want with it. Like, hey, I want to put a Windows operating system on the Switch, or I want to and why they do it is because they want to prevent pirating. But I think that the pirating is going to happen whether or not they ruin their normal customers' Switches, and it's like one pin out of thousands, right? It's not going to be noticeable for. It's not really a huge issue, but if I want to play Breath of the Wild Second Wind, for example, I can't because I got a later version of the Switch, and so that's already been fused, and it's gone.
Yeah.
And your Switch doesn't have the capability to do that fusing, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so in order to hack a Switch, you either need a Switch that never updated past a certain version, or you need one of the first Switches that came out, the first batch. And I believe your Switch was one of the first batch of Switches somehow. Because you got your Switch like 2 years after they came out.
It shipped to here, though.
Yeah, I guess there's
and was on sale.
Yeah,
in a warehouse.
So just been sitting there for a while.
Yeah, it was in a Walmart just on sale, and it was probably in a warehouse for like a year and a half before I even got here.
Yeah, I think it was the first year of Switches were able to, you can hack still with and you can still, if you do some soldering yourself on the new Switches, you can hack them, but I don't want to mess with that. Yeah, it's dang late stage capitalism. You don't own anything. You that's kind of weird though, isn't it? Like, that's capital.
Yeah.
And it's kind of not capitalism at that point.
Well, so there's this scene.
It's like a rent economy.
From the ads I've seen for the latest Scream series, I think they made instead of a movie. And so she goes to her phone and she presses lock all doors, and so all the doors lock. And the serial killer, the ghost mask, has her friend's phone, which also has access to all the locks in her house. And so he unlocks all doors. And so she locks all doors with her phones. Then he unlocks all doors, and then she locks all doors. Then he unlocks all doors, and then he gets into her house. And I'm thinking, a terrible idea to have it.
I don't know if that exists. That might be a critique.
Yeah.
Although
I mean, just even if it doesn't exist or it does exist, in general, having your phones have the capability to unlock your house.
Well, have you seen the Tiguan ads where they start the car with their phone?
Yeah.
I was thinking that's just another point of security failure.
Well,
someone steals your phone, they now have your car.
There's another ad which I've been seeing, which is like, what if you didn't have to go to a store to get food? What if you didn't have to do this? What if you didn't have to go to a bank to do your banking? If I go to the bank, they're accountable, and I can talk to a human. If it's an app or something, like, all the annoying things you have to go through with apps, and it's like, be on customer service. Like, if you go to a bank, you can speak to that bank branch manager. You can, like...
Now, to be fair to the phone door thing, it's a lot easier to pick a lock than it is to hack a phone.
Yes.
But
this wasn't hacking a phone. This was, he killed someone, took their phone, and then could unlock the doors. Although you could see...
But her phone should have been locked, right?
Yeah.
Like how do you unlock her phone?
Yeah, fair enough.
Maybe she had fingerprints. That's another thing. Never use biometric locks, ever.
Yeah.
This is something that I don't understand. Like, Linus Tech Tips, they're really in favor of them. Because they're incredibly secure. Like, you are the only one, maybe your identical twin, but for fingerprints, only you are able to unlock the biometric scans. But don't use them, because security there's two portions to security, right? First of all, there's just the raw brute force needed to get through it. So a password takes quite a bit. If you have up to a 16-digit or longer password, it takes quite a bit of computing power to get through. A key, on the other hand, is essentially 8-bit. It's very... Now, some locks have like modern locks, they have very fancy systems in place to prevent you
But
from.
if you watch the lockpicking lawyer, he can go straight through
Yeah.
those.
But they do have some very, especially door locks for houses.
Yeah.
There's some very sophisticated mechanisms. They have these little screens that
Yeah.
block them, and they have
Fake.
Yeah, they have fake pins, and they have what's the other? We ran into one. I don't actually watch the lockpicking
lawyer.
the lockpicking lawyer. But from my own experience of picking locks, I noticed that it's very easy to pick like a normal padlock type thing. But then door locks, they have those little screens in the way, which are really annoying because you need a third hand basically to get past them, or a specialized tool. And then they have the fake pins, and then they also have they had some sort of mechanism to like jam essentially.
Yeah.
Like they have some sort of built-in jamming mechanism that I seem to recall, and which you can unjam, but it just makes the whole thing more finicky.
Yeah.
Because basically, one way to hack a lock is you jiggle a pick like crazy.
Yeah. Or you just use rake. You just shove a rake in.
Yeah, well, raking is when you just take a pick and you go like...
Well, there's a rake pick tool, though.
Right.
That's the wavy one.
Okay.
They're actually called a rake.
just... Because I've raked with just a pick.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing how fast you can pick a lock that you're used to. You can pick in less than a second.
Yeah, so the rake tool is people are quite good with it. When they take a padlock, they can literally shove a rake in like 3 times, and then it's unlocked.
But if you have these like fusing pins, what happens is the rake will fuse them, and then the key won't turn because you have to avoid that specific pin, and that's where knowledge comes into the fact. So the lockpicking lawyer, what lockpicking is, the basics of lockpicking, very simple. You can learn that in like a couple hours. After that, it's all about knowledge. So the lockpicking lawyer, why he's so good is he knows about all the brands of keys.
Yeah.
And so what you have to know is, well, they have a fuse on the 3rd or 5th pin.
Yeah.
And I assume that they don't publish that typically, but you just buy a lock, take it apart, and you figure it out. Because they have to mass produce it at some point.
One of the things he explained about the point of weakest entry is he wanted to do a test for his wife and try to get her interested in lockpicking. So he bought this product, which is he could lock an ice cream bucket's lid in place. It's going to be a fun learning experience for her. She can do something I'm interested in, and it will also reduce the amount of ice cream she eats. And he got home, and she's sitting there like the cat that ate the canary, and the ice cream bucket is flipped upside down, and the bottom of it was just cut out. She just took a knife to it. It's like, always be aware of the weakest...
Yeah, so that's how hacking works in general, like computer hacking. Because you can't bypass most passwords with brute force. Mm-hmm. So for computer hacking, what you typically do is you go to the server where the passwords are stored and you steal the server. Or you just phone and say, hey, I'm this person and I lost my password.
You can boot them in different modes with older computers.
Yeah, well, with laptops, you can just put them into a sort of recovery mode and then you can edit the password of the computer, which we found out with your laptop when we were trying to fix it. So that's kind of one half of security. But the lockpicking lawyer, if you have a biometric lock, he can't get through that.
No.
And he's done videos where he shows these unbreakable locks that have a backup, and he goes through the backup.
Yeah.
But like a biometric scan, he's not going to be able to hack that.
Yeah, he'd just take out a screwdriver and go through it then.
Yeah.
Or like a metal...
But let's say you had like a titanium box with a biometric scan. There's another point of weakness, which is you. Mm-hmm. And what that means is the person that wants to steal it will have to convince you to open it for them. And if they really want it, they will convince you, or... they'll cut off your finger and they'll just keep it warm while they swipe it, or they'll put a current through it and they'll swipe it, or they'll cut out your eye and use it, or they'll torture you until you make... So I think it's much better to just have a password that you can tell them and be like, okay, look, I don't want any trouble. Here's the password to my bank account.
Yeah.
Like, you do not want it to be... Because if it's, you just cut off their thumb, they don't even have to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to try to convince you. They don't have to be reasonable. They can just cut off your thumb and they don't have to waste their time of day. So, yeah, biometrics, terrible idea in my opinion.
And then you have that liquid metal thing from RS Foul security.
Which, wasn't that just a biometric thing?
No, so what happened, it was a biometric, but it
and
was
they ended up cutting off the guy's finger.
No, so they saw that, so they had to. And so Foley later on developed a liquid metal, which is you shove your whole arm into it, and it checks your pulse, and then it's like doing several other scans on you all at once. So basically, in that case, you would actually need to coerce Foley into opening the door for you.
And so even then, like, don't do that, because do you just want to get tortured until they make you do it?
Foley has his overrides, where he'll say his own name if you're trying to coerce him, and then the floor will shoot electricity at you.
Yeah. But like someone like Opal...
Well, she beat him.
Yeah, I imagine she ends up torturing him or something at one point.
Well, not different ways, but basically she hacked his security system, and so he was supposed to have an electric floor, and so he said... activate, and it didn't because it was hacked, And then one of his own security turrets shot him.
And biometrics are also terrible in a world where mind control exists.
Yeah.
This mesmerizing is a huge thing that fairies can do. And the most evil person in the world is a fairy.
Yeah.
A very powerful fairy. So, now in Orson Scott Card has this short story.
Well, that's why the Eternity Code that Armis makes is much better.
Yeah, whatever it is.
The Infinity Code.
Yeah.
It's Eternity Code, yes.
Yeah, Eternity Code. But whatever that is.
Yeah.
Because that seemed just kind of magical, unhackable something. So what's a much better system if you really want to be secure is similar to what you said about Foley. So in Orson Scott Card's book, what's it called? Goo Boy?
Oh yeah, Goo Boy.
They have this system where Goo Boy is a human cyborg guy, basically. He has brain damage, so they filled his brain with nanomachines, basically.
Yeah, with Goo.
Yeah, and so he's able to deduce by studying you what your password is, because passwords are not random. You determine them, even if you have a password that you make up of random letters, that you came to that decision to choose those random letters through the aspects of your life. Like you most common press a G when you start typing and mashing at a keyboard, for example. So Goo Boy's able to just follow you around for a couple of weeks and determine what your random password would be. So there's two ways to go around that. First of all is one they don't talk about in the book, which is what I do for my passwords, just because it's convenient, not because I'm that concerned about security. I don't make my own passwords. I have a random generator do it.
Yeah.
And so now if someone could figure out that random generator, or that random generator wasn't secure, that would be a massive point of failure.
Yeah.
But Goo Boy wouldn't be able to, because I don't know the pattern for determining my own passwords.
Yeah.
The theory is nobody knows the pattern.
Well, one of those patterns is based off lava lamps.
Yeah, not the thing I'm using. It's a, I don't think it connects to the, because I think it's based on entropy. So my programming knowledge is very weak. Okay, so take everything, and I need to talk about entropy later, actually. So digital entropy, when we're talking about computers, every time you copy data, you lose a few bits. So they try to have it stored multiple times to or to fill in the gaps, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's why when I'm saving audio files, I don't export them, I save them, and then I work with that save file instead of working with the export wave. Because if I was to take a wave and then work on that and then export and then take a wave and work on that, it would degrade our audio actually quite quickly.
And there's always a little bit of failure here and there every time you copy. And there is ways to fill those back in. Like you do a deductive reasoning, and you also have multiple copies, and then you take the uncorrupted versions. Yeah. But there's always a bit of loss, and that builds up on your hard drive. And so to determine randomness, what you can do is you just look for entropy or corruption in your computer, and you use that to determine randomness, which I think would probably be what it does. It might also be based, so some things computers do, they base it on your temperature, they base it on the decibels of the fan your computer's using, they base it on the vibrations your fan creates in your case.
Yeah.
They base it on the exact time you determine it, which down to the thousandth millisecond, like millionth of a second, which is far less secure than the others. Yeah. But it's still very, for video games, that's all you need, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what method it uses, but that's what I do. The other way to do it is what they do in the Goo Boy thing. So he determines the guy's password very simply, and he types it in, and the police come and arrest them and take them away.
Yeah.
And they're talking to him, and he says, "What? I thought you said you could crack any passwords." Like, that was the right password. But he types it in wrong twice before he types in the correct password. Yeah. And if he types it in right the first time, the police come instead.
Yeah, and the AI basically learned that this guy would always accidentally double press D or whatever.
No, he did it on purpose. That was his security method.
I thought he did it wrong, and the computer learned he did it wrong over time.
No, I think he was doing it on purpose for security.
Okay.
But I could be remembering wrong. But anyways, that is something you can do.
Well, I thought that was from the one with the monkey.
Essentially, you have a silent alarm built in. Dogwalker, that was the guy's name.
Dogwalker and Goo Boy.
Yeah, they're the two criminal masterminds.
Yeah.
Well, mercenary homeless guys, basically. But
and then Dogwalker's brain gets filled with goo, and so Goo Boy has to take care of him, and it's a really depressing story.
Yeah.
I don't like Cruel Miracles.
No, the whole thing's kind of depressing.
And he released the volume 2 with a different name, but a bunch of other sad stories.
So, speaking of entropy, I need to make a massive correction about our last episode.
Mm-hmm.
Because I said... So, yeah, my notes here say, Mia Dum Dum.
Yeah.
So...
That's a name, Mia Dum Dum.
To be clear, last time, what I said was entropy is order.
Yeah.
That is the exact opposite of what entropy is. Now, surprisingly, me being catastrophically wrong about that did very little to affect the overall content of our conversation.
Yeah.
Which I think says something about meta-narratives in general, whereby how resilient they can be. And this is also related to programs. They have missing bits and whatnot, but they still run. But it's kind of amazing that I can get the fundamental aspect of our conversation reversed, and the entire conversation still works.
Well, I said acid instead of basic. And my experimental video.
Both dissolve things, though. So
Yeah, well, when I'm saying acid or basic, it's corrosive. That's what I'm meaning.
Whereas entropy is to do with the direction of time, so it is quite important in some ways. But the whole conversation still worked for the most part. So I want to just be very clear. Entropy is chaos. Entropy is information. The point of confusion for me was that after time, the entire universe is going to be, theoretically, is going to be an even lukewarm soup.
Yeah.
Just particles spread out evenly throughout the universe at the same ambient temperature.
Yeah.
And I call that very low information because you can but it isn't low information. It's actually as high information as possible. Because what information is, in essence, is the number of possible arrangements of the quantum state of your entire system. So this soup can have basically infinite forms. So one way to look at it is if I roll a die 1,000,000 times, you're going to get like the same amount of 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s almost.
Yeah.
However, there's going to be a few more of one number and a few less of another number and that sort of thing, right? Those few more and a little bit more, there's millions of combinations for what that could be. Yeah. If I roll a die one time, there's only going to be one number rolled. And so there's only 6 viable combinations.
Yeah.
So that's low information. Where if I roll a die 1,000,000 times, so the graph looks very spiky because there's this massive outlier. But there's only 6 possible outliers. Whereas a very even graph has billions of outliers. Yeah. So I think there's an interesting conversation to be had about information where, from a meta perspective, like an outside, like if you take a step back, it is actually very low information because you can describe it with it's a meh. It's just it's a big, even soup. You can't determine the individual characteristics of it down to the last second. And so there's what's the dude's paradox? You can't measure a particle's
Fermi?
No, you can't measure a particle's position and velocity at the same time. And I think it's not a resolution to the paradox, it's a dismissal of it, which is who cares? Because I can't, if someone throws a snowball at my head, right? I can't determine every single aspect of every single atom within that snowball, but I can still step out of the way of the snowball. I think you can almost ignore the smaller scale stuff and it all works out. Yeah. Because, well, and the reason it does work out is kind of because of entropy, because the snowball isn't going to teleport over and hit me because all the atoms' wavelengths are going to collapse 5 feet to the left just simultaneously. Like, it'd be much more likely the snowball just blows apart in midair. Yeah. It could happen, but it's so unlikely that it's not a concern. Because
it's funny. So when I was younger, I had this belief of like Kung Fu Master or whatever, like if there's a structure, you like tap in one point, the whole thing will shatter. You just need to know the point. And then got older, just like that's impossible, that's ridiculous. It is possible. However, it is so improbable.
So
that's impossible.
There's a book I've written. I don't know if
you've told me a bit about it.
Anyone know if you know about this book even. But yeah, I wrote a book. I've never published it. I've never shown it to anyone, never talked about it to anyone. I wrote it with a friend of mine. And like it's full, like 200-300 page book. He did most of the writing. Yeah. But the magic system is essentially anti-entropy. That's not how we determined it to begin with, but...
Well, we talked about this. I had to basically tell you about the theory of men who stare at goats and the walking through wall was. Someone's something or other, but it's basically someone can randomly explode. Yeah. Or like stupid stuff can happen.
But then I had to get into like Maxwell's Demon and into entropy and chance and what is possible. And basically... most things are possible. Yeah. Now, the exact order of events to have them is very complicated. But what happened was, my character, I think I've talked about this possibly even on the podcast, but not my character. Well, see, we each wrote a character for the story. Yeah. And they are in opposition to each other. And, well, not exactly in opposition to each other. But their lives are very separate, let's say. Yeah. So, one of them works for the Emperor, one of them's trying to kill the Emperor. So I call that slight opposition.
Yeah.
So the character he writes is a master mage, and the character I write is a master magician. But a magician, as in he does magic tricks for parties, like he pulls a rabbit out of a hat type magician, whereas his character can do full-blown magic. But because the magic is bound by the rules of what is possible, it is more science than magic in a lot of ways. However, the other author just kind of went crazy with it, and so my character, who's a scientist as well as a magician, me personally and my character are left to try to pull together the pieces of what on earth he's doing. It's like there's a part where he punches a wall and the whole wall like shatters, like literally, like you said, and the character's just like, there is no matter how lucky you are, there isn't a world where you break a brick. And so he's trying to figure it out, and so what he comes up with is, it's possible that a wall may have a weak point.
Yeah.
And you can't move the weak point because the wall has already been determined.
Yeah.
However, using your power may cause you to punch the weak point. So your power may control you to achieve your end goal, is his determination. However, it could also be that everything just teleported the wrong way and just...
Yeah.
But there is also to keep in mind the weak nuclear force.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how that works with waveforms. I don't know what the interaction there is.
What's really interesting is if gravity was just a little bit different, or if this weak nuclear force was just a little bit stronger, the universe wouldn't work.
Oh, actually, I do know what happens there. Because the sun's gravity is higher than the particle's ability to overcome the weak nuclear force.
Yes.
So they actually do have to teleport out of the sun. So it would be possible, I guess.
I mean, another possibility is he punches the wall, and at that exact moment, a whole bunch of the nuclei decide to unbind from each other and then rebind. And
I'm not sure if they can or not.
They can,
but
basically, how that would happen is a ton of electrons would basically steal each other at specific points and then smash into the nucleuses, and then they would shatter them.
Or what could also happen, if you want to get really crazy, is like a packet of neutrinos could all punch the wall at the same time and just smash it. I don't even know if neutrinos have a force, but let's say something along that line of an outside force could interact with it. Like a comet could just be knocked off course by a sun's ray and smash into the earth. It's... And I don't think he was wrong to do that, because what happens is our system...
Or an earthquake could have happened very localized in that spot and knock down the wall.
Well, and it's very interesting, though, because our system is theoretically scientific.
Yeah.
But it kind of follows the stipulation of magic that it's unrepeatable, which I think is a Robin Hobbes stipulation of magic, which is really interesting because at its base core, the universe is kind of that way. But
also, it sets some interesting hard rules. Like, you actually can't bring someone back to life with it, and you can't reattach an arm.
Yeah.
Like, it's very hard to do healing with that magic. And a lot of times you're like, you can't heal with magic. Meh. This actually has a very good reason of you can't heal with magic.
Yeah, his character might actually heal at one point. I can't remember.
Well, his blood flow could have stopped through some ridiculous thing. Like, he could have formed a blood clot in one area. And
there's also... They can create magical shields somehow, so there might be more aspects to it than just the luck. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Because there's a point where my character has to essentially determine how to overcome magical shields, and he does it by creating a Faraday cage.
Yeah.
So I don't remember if that was due to just abusing the weak nuclear force or something, or...
Could be.
But yeah, it's interesting, though, because the universe is essentially magical at the bottom level. Based on our current understanding, which I talked about last time. We have no idea, but based on our current understanding, at the base level, the universe is essentially magical and random. But if you just take a little step back, it's deterministic.
Yeah.
And Einstein thought it was deterministic all the way down. And he didn't want it to be random.
He really didn't like quantum physics.
Neither did Schrödinger.
Yeah.
Schrodinger's the guy that came up with a lot of the equations, but he came up with the equations because he's good at math.
Yeah.
And he looked at them and said, these are nonsense. Like, this would suggest that you could have things that are alive and dead at the same time. And
I just think your magic system could have a power word kill.
Where you just have a heart attack or something.
Well, a heart attack, or, I mean, this is a little more far-fetched, but the sun just sends out a wave, like a very thin channel.
Or just a black hole sends a gamma ray.
Well, I think like gamma rays from black holes are rather big, but the sun just sends out a whip of a gamma ray and overrides the magnetic field, and so just one person suddenly just gets sterilized.
So so it's an 11-year cycle. The sun's solar
Whips.
solar cycle.
Yeah.
Where it has stronger solar winds and weaker solar winds.
Yeah.
And do you know why it's every 11 years?
No.
That's when the sun's magnetic poles flip.
Ah.
Do you know why the sun's magnetic poles flip?
Not at all.
Okay, well, if you knew, that would be quite something.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, I don't know if anyone does, but I just had to check.
Well, you see, I could bullshit my way through it, and I'd probably be wrong.
So going into the statistics again for entropy.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, well, first of all, if you're learning physics from us, you might be in the wrong place. But
this is what we call philosophical physics.
well, the philosophy of science, it's a real discipline.
Yeah.
It's just they tend to know what they're talking about, unlike
yes,
us.
we do. But I'm talking about like the old philosophers, the Greek guys, were like, everything's a bunch of planets with smaller planets orbiting out.
Yeah.
Like that's the level of physics.
Well, they didn't say that. They said the base element is fire, the base element is water, and then they made the determinations from there. And then you got into there's the orbiting of the spheres and everything, the atom, all that. It's
impossible to hit a turtle with an arrow.
Yeah. Well, that's what you do. It's the exact same. Zeno's paradox is Schrodinger's cat. It's here's what physics says. The result is impossible, obviously.
Yeah.
So what's going on here? Either physics is wrong, or our understanding of the entire how everything works is wrong. Because what the Greeks, first the Greeks thought you couldn't overcome infinity, which fair enough, that doesn't really make sense, but you can.
Yeah.
Which is weird, really. Like the Greeks it makes more sense that you couldn't hit a turtle with an arrow, but you can actually have infinite amount of. Actually, this goes into when I'm talking more about entropy and black holes and white holes, because it does change our conversation about white holes and black holes. There is a thought that black holes are infinite, as in they last for an infinite amount of time. However,
small black holes collapse.
Okay, there's a thought that there's eternal black holes.
Okay.
Which aren't caused by suns collapsing.
Yeah.
But they've always been there. So there's black holes that were there always, and they will always be there. That they are possible based on. See, black holes and white holes all came from one guy who just did a little equation, and he came up with both. And then they were like, well, these seem kind of weird. And then they pushed it to the extreme, and they got eternal black holes and eternal white holes. So, but it gets kind of weird because, well, I'll get into it. But yeah, with Zeno, you can overcome infinity. And with Schrodinger, maybe Schrodinger's equations are wrong, and we have to throw out that whole discipline. Or maybe there's multiple universes, maybe the universes are overlaid. Maybe we're all in a super state at all times, and so one of the cat's further flung super states is it dead, and one of its is alive. And by creating this experiment, you just create a situation where it's more extreme.
I mean, isn't one of the problems though the cat's the observer?
Yeah, so that's something that I haven't heard about enough, which is the idea of observation causes the waveform to collapse. However, there isn't a definition of what an observer is, because we don't know what active observation. Because an active observation could be interaction. Like if I throw a rock at another rock, you need both rocks to be there in order to calculate what happens. Yeah. So that could be the active observation. Which, when you put it that way, it almost sounds like the Earth is in power saving mode until it, like, you know how old animations, they would only interact with the background once they when they needed to, and otherwise they're static?
Yeah.
That kind of sounds like what's going on with the universe.
Well, the gold foil experiment, where you fire electrons at gold foil, and you have like gold foil, gold foil, gold foil, gold foil. And so what should be happening is electron, and so you have basically a split between them. And
so a bunch of parallel sheets of gold foil.
Yeah, parallel sheets of gold foil. And basically imagine a wall sort of in between them. So like you're cutting it all in half. So you have a left side and a right side. So if you imagine an electron like a cannonball, right?
Yeah.
And you fire it at the gold foil. So the electron should go through one side or the other.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole way. However, through weird...
Wait, is this wall perpendicular to everything or parallel still?
Perpendicular. So
there's a 90-degree angle?
Yeah, 90 degree.
Okay, so it's perpendicular.
Yeah. So what you should find is that it goes through the left side or the right side.
Yeah.
But however, because of weird observational wave point collapsing, it will go 3 down the left, and then 1 down the right, then another 3 down the left, and then it'll end up somewhere. And there's a whole bunch of experiments like this, which is quantum weirdness. Which is you can observe electrons basically because of observations only at the point. Which thing they hit is not what logically it should hit, but actually is logically what it hits.
Yeah, because, well, it has to hit something.
Yeah.
And so, but it can hit anything within its wave function.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know, but I do believe wave functions are actually infinite in size. However, there's a much smaller space, which is the probable wave function. Which could also mean that you could just instantly be transported to the other side of the universe. Or half of you. It'd be much more likely that half of you was.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting thought on its
own.
Well,
there's another thought that we're constantly losing atoms, and then they're getting brought back through that collapse. Is basically you're not static at all. Like, nothing's static. Because there's a very much belief that if you have a bar of gold, all those atoms are going to be in that bar of gold. However, because of wave theory, wave particle theory, because wave theory was dismissed and so was particle theory, and we have wave particle theory, that piece of gold could be constantly switching atoms with another piece of gold. Because they're not static.
Wouldn't it be more that it was...
And it's far more likely that electrons are constantly switching spots with each other, and they do that. Electrons like to dance. But...
So molecules would be exchanged, but it wouldn't be like one bar of gold to the next, because the distance would be crazy. There's some properties of metal I find mind-blowing. Like, you can fuse metal together without anything.
That's because of its structure.
Yeah, but what does that tell you about the definition between objects? The only thing holding things apart is air.
Well, it's actually the strong and weak nuclear forces are what holding things apart.
But they're in some... Right, but there's no connection. You think of things as bonded, right? As if there's, like, struts between them. But if you take a piece of iron and another piece of iron in a vacuum and jam them together, they become a single piece of iron. You don't have to do anything. The structures align, and you just boom, now you have one piece of iron.
In this rather terrible anime, at one point the two characters are fighting a god, and they're playing a game where whatever they say disappears from the universe, and the last person to be able to speak wins. So that's the idea. So this god is indestructible, very, very powerful because it can do this in a simulation. And so at one point, so the two siblings, the thing they do is they get rid of all the air in the atmosphere. And they've like destroyed the planet at this point. So the god's floating there, and they both breathed in a whole bunch. So they have enough air to say one last thing. And the last thing they say is the weak nuclear force. And so in the simulation they win because there's
crunches together. Yeah, because there'd be nothing holding the molecules apart.
Yeah.
So just...
yeah, but they're basically destroying a whole bunch of other things beforehand so they could get to the point of destroying that. And then the god has like no rebuttal and everything returns back to normal, so they win the game. But it's just
get rid of the strong nuclear force and just drifts apart.
Yeah. No, I think they actually got rid of the strong nuclear force.
Anyways. So yeah, with so I also need to correct then the statistical interpretation slightly.
Yeah.
Because it isn't that things become more ordered over time; they become less ordered. And so so why is that the case now? Why do statistics give a very strong evidence for entropy existing in the first place? Not for entropy existing, but for the second law of thermodynamics.
Yeah.
And that is because things evenly distribute over time, which, you roll a die and you get an average results. And this gives them more options, not less, like I said before. For example, another way to look at it is water spread across pavement will evaporate faster than water in a cup because there's more possible ways for that water to evaporate. Yeah. And so that's another way to look at that. So now I want to get into black holes, but I have to just go to the bathroom quickly. So, right, black holes. So, if entropy is information, then black holes do not increase entropy, they decrease entropy because they are ordering the universe. They are reducing everything to a single point. They're destroying information.
Yeah.
So black holes reduce entropy. So what happened was Stephen Hawking looked at that idea and he said, well, but the second law of thermodynamics says that entropy increases. So this gets kind of weird.
Is this Hawking radiation?
Yes, but this gets weird because last time we said how the second law of thermodynamics was determined through empiricism. They observed the universe and saw that nothing violated the idea that entropy increases.
Yeah.
And then black holes violate the idea that entropy increases. So therefore, the black holes were wrong. Like that
so
seems
they have
like
to produce Hawking radiation.
that's circular reasoning, if you ask me. Like that is circular reasoning.
Do we have observation of Hawking radiation?
Recently, I think that it's been more theoretically observed, as in we think even more so now that it exists. But I don't think it's still being confirmed because it's well, there's no nearby black holes as far as I'm aware. So you said black holes dissipate.
Yeah.
But nothing escapes a black hole. So
they collapse.
Right, but that's dissipation, right? Where do they collapse to? So I'll explain. Don't worry.
Okay.
But how? Nothing escapes a black hole. There's no reason for them to collapse. They should be stable, right? If nothing escapes, all time leads to them. To collapse, things have to go away.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't just disappear into the space time and then they're gone. They just like drip. I mean, maybe they do drip out. That could work.
And then there's this little bubble of space-time mesh dripping down below it.
Yeah, and and then the rest springs back up behind it. So it's like a water drop.
And then it goes boom.
That's actually really cool. Forget Hawking radiation. Okay, the entire universe.
Ooh, that could be white holes. Okay, so it's another water droplet, right?
Yeah.
So it drips out, and then because it's no longer a stretching fabric, right? It then expands because it's like its own little bubble. It could be a dot, but it can also expand. And then when it expands, it bumps up against space-time, but they're no longer connected. So it makes a bump. And then you have a white hole.
Well, no, because a bump wouldn't be a white hole. It would be like it spreading.
That's what a white hole is. A white hole is a thing in the opposite direction.
Because you wouldn't notice a bump. Because if you imagine space-time as a two-dimensional fabric, a bump isn't actually going to change space-time. Like no matter how you wave the fabric, it's not going to change the structure of the fabric.
So it just bumps it weird.
So, but if all of space-time was a two-dimensional puddle and the drops coming off are black holes, that'd be kind of cool. So, anyways, Stephen Hawking has a different idea, which is mathematically based, I believe. So, I mean,
mathematics.
So, and I also do want to point out, I didn't get the quote, unfortunately, but apparently in A Brief History of Time, Stephen Hawking proves he's a very smart guy because he agrees with my statement from last time that entropy isn't so much that entropy increases over time, it's that entropy is time. Or that the direction that because what I said was things happen everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
And the more probable things are the direction of time.
Yeah.
Stephen Hawking said the exact same thing in A Brief History of Time, apparently. So, I mean, kudos to him for being smart enough to figure that out as well.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I had faith in him that he could get to our level. So that was kind of cool of him to figure that out. So yeah, entropy does sound like it's describing time in that sense. And also, so I do wonder what the implications would be of luck manipulation. Would that be reversing time or not? But, which is what I talked about last time. So what Hawking radiation is well, first of all, so the theory is beyond Hawking radiation, is that black holes contain entropy, but but we can't measure it. So everything in a black hole is still there. It's just we can't access it.
Yeah.
So the entropy in the universe hasn't changed, even though the entropy available to us has decreased.
Yeah.
So that's one theory, which I don't know what the point of having entropy is at that point, because then practically it's still going down, because you're never going to go into the black hole.
It's just so you can keep having the second law of thermodynamics.
Well, it's not for cynical reasons, though. It's just the second law is talking about macro scales.
Yes, the second law is also works really well.
Yeah, as we discussed last time. So Hawking radiation is actually really cool. So the idea, like you said with the gold, except not really, particles are always appearing and disappearing all the time.
Yeah.
Just to a degree. So what Hawking radiation is nothing is actually escaping the black hole, because nothing can escape a black hole.
Yeah.
So instead, just around the event horizon, like directly on the event horizon, essentially, the idea of Hawking radiation is you have a particle and an antiparticle appear simultaneously.
Yeah.
And the antiparticle gets sucked into the black hole, and the particle
Escapes because they're entangled.
flies away. I don't know if it's because they're entangled.
Well, not entangled, but at the point where they're created.
Yeah, it just flies the opposite direction, and it escapes because it's just outside of the event horizon, and the antiparticle is just inside. So it gets sucked in, and so the positive particle escapes. And so what then happens is this antiparticle goes into the black hole, interacts with the matter there, deletes it.
Yeah.
And so the black hole steadily loses mass as it gets filled with negative matter, essentially, until it disappears. And so Hawking radiation is just the nature of the black hole drawing into itself antimatter, essentially antiparticles, and sending out energy, which, if I understand correctly, is how solar panels work to a degree. They have two layers of material, and the sun interacts with the so one of them is full of like a charge and one of them isn't, and the sun interacts with the empty one, which causes them to swap places, and then the filled stuff gets poured off into the electrical outlet, and then
Sure.
they swap back because it's lighter than the energy filled one and it rises to the top. It's nothing like that.
Antimatter's not getting created. Otherwise, solar panels will explode.
No, but there's a space for an electron that isn't there. It's a state where the electron isn't there, and so the sunlight fills that space, and that causes. But these two layers of material cannot both contain energy, so it shoots the energy out of the one, I believe, and then that causes it to refill. So it's like a bunch of balls with holes with balls in them, and then a ball goes on top, and that pushes the ball on the bottom down, and then it falls into the slot below, and then those balls go off and power your house, and then new balls land on top. And I think that's how solar panels work.
Maybe. I'm not a solar panel
person. But me neither. So yeah, Hawking radiation is kind of cool because you have a thing that can't be escaped being destroyed from the inside, essentially. Yeah. So the idea of black holes is that you can go through them. So to an outside observer, so eternal black holes. To an outside observer, they're eternal. Mm-hmm. But to someone that goes into the black hole, they can pass through it in a finite amount of time because it only covers a specific amount of, time, right? Because infinite time passes, but that has to end at some point on the inside.
Yeah.
So if you were indestructible, I wish I had written the notes better for that bit. But anyways, if you're indestructible and you go through a black hole, you would experience finite time and emerge infinite time later. So, that'd be... Jeez. Can you imagine emerging infinite... So, let's say it's only like an hour. You go through the black hole and you're on the other side. Infinite time has passed. That's going to mess your morning up.
Yeah.
Like... Let's hope it's like Discworld, where you get an identical universe just looping through every time. Because...
be awfully convenient.
Yeah. So then the idea with white holes... So, right. With black holes, they... Come on, brain. I think I missed a very important note here. Okay, white holes are the opposite of black holes. And white holes emit.
Yeah.
But it takes particles an infinite amount of time to get there. Whereas black holes, it takes an infinite amount of time to enter them.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so it takes the particles an infinite amount of time to leave the white hole, infinite amount of time to enter the black hole.
Yeah.
I think that's how that works. So, eternal black holes predict, not the ones caused by a collapsed star, but the ones that have always been there and will always be there, that black holes and white holes are the same object. So a black hole... I'm trying to remember the order here. At the end of time... an infinite amount of time, a black hole becomes a white hole. Or No, so that's from the outside observer. At the end of an infinite amount of time, a black hole becomes a white hole.
Yeah.
However, from the point of view of the black hole, black holes are destroyed the instant they are formed, and a white hole appears in the center. I think is how that goes. And so, but because there's an infinite amount of time for both, these notes actually make sense when I wrote them. Jeez. You have two separate interior regions. You have the black hole and the white hole that you can pass through. There's a single point, and if you pass through either one, either you pass through the white hole or you pass through the black hole. But there is also two separate outsides to these objects. So you could, if you go through it, you could hit the white hole or the black hole. But you also can emerge in your universe or a different universe. And now this is what the math shows. This isn't theory. This is what the math says about black holes and white holes.
Yeah.
Whether or not this is what happens, we don't know. But this is what the math says. So if you think black holes exist, they were found with math. So this is still the math.
Yeah.
But eternal black holes might not exist in the first place. What the heck? Right, so if you enter... Oh, and that's the other thing. If you enter a black hole, you cannot leave the black hole in the same universe. So you must always emerge in a new universe through the white hole? I don't know.
Wibbly wobbly, wimey-timey space stuff.
Come on. This was really cool when I was writing the notes, honest. I'm sorry.
I get it.
So the inside of a black hole
Basically all my writing.
can contain a mix of particles
Yep.
from both universes. Because the black hole exists in both universes. But the particles can only emerge in the opposite universe. So a way to travel through... So the interior of a black hole... So if we fell into the interior of a black hole, right?
Yeah.
And we're just sitting there, and we're seeing the particles flying in, we could see light from another universe, and thereby determine features of that other universe from within the black hole.
Yeah.
However, of course, we can't leave back to our own universe. All of our stuff has to go to that universe. So there's not much to be learned. But if you could catch a black hole in that universe back to your universe, you could have a method of very fast transportation. Because if you emerge in different areas in the other universe, that's essentially teleportation, which is called the Einstein-Rosenberg bridge, which is where two black hole event horizons in each universe are connected.
Or a wormhole.
With, yes, this is one of the wormhole ideas.
Yeah, the Einstein-Rosenberg thing is...
Rosenbridge, sorry.
Is a fancy name for a wormhole that people like to scientifically use.
Well, wormholes... There's several different kinds of wormholes. So there's a one...
But I'm saying this because in Thor, the first movie with the teleportation, they call it the Einstein-Rosenberg thing. And it's not that. It's a wormhole. It's not that specific kind of wormhole. It's a different kind.
So an Einstein-Rosen bridge is where two black holes are connected. Well, it's the same black hole in two universes. Yeah. Or it's two black holes that overlap. I'm not sure. Whereas a different kind of wormhole could be you enter a black hole and emerge from a white hole. And another kind of wormhole is where space-time is folded and you pass through a shortcut through... Yeah. You just tear a hole through space and time, and that's what they do in Star Trek.
Yeah.
So Star Trek doesn't go through black holes into white holes, and they actually do in an episode, but that's a specific thing they do. They use it to teleport way through the universe, I believe. And they also do not go through one black hole and emerge out on the other side of another black hole infinite time later in a different universe. The time aspect there is interesting as well, because you would merge a finite time later from your universe into the other universe, but finite time passed for you. So I wonder if you could return to your universe within a finite amount of time or not. Well, I guess not, because the black hole would have to expire. No, but the white hole you were exiting from, if it was also a black hole... I'm really butchering. The Einstein-Rosen bridge can also connect two white hole event horizons in each universe, with points in the interior of the bridge being part of the white hole region. It would be impossible to use the bridge to cross from one universe to the other, however, because it's impossible to enter a white hole from the outside, which I talked about before. Yeah. You have to have started in the black hole, out in the white hole, and then go back in time to enter a white hole. Yeah. And anyone who enters a black hole from either universe will hit the singularity, and so they also won't be able to. So you have to enter the event horizon and avoid the singularity.
Yeah.
And go into the other universe. So practicality might not be there, but in theory,
Once you make an indestructible ship that can create a bubble of time around itself.
and avoid the singularity somehow, because I think.
Well, that's why I'm saying a bubble of time would let you avoid the singularity.
But I'm not. The diagram the guy drew is like a caveman drawing. I didn't understand it at all, and it's like the simplest thing I've ever seen. But it's like an X, right? And he said at the top of the there's a north, east, south, west, right?
Yeah.
So the north of this diagram is the black hole singularity. No, sorry, it's the black hole event horizon. The south is the white hole event horizon.
Yeah.
The east and the west are the universes.
Yeah.
The point they cross is, I have no idea. Like the point of the center. I don't know what that is. And then he put a little curve inside each of them that he called the singularity. So I guess in theory, if you went directly through the center and like hit the black hole and white hole event horizon at the same time, maybe you could.
Well, or you can do that.
Well, I don't know what the diagram exactly is meant to be.
Yeah, but
So
a piece of paper is very good at representing our knowledge of space-time.
it's
It's actually surprisingly good at representing it.
I'm actually kind of disappointed because they're. Why don't I have? So it takes an infinite amount of time to get to the center of a black hole, but you will experience it as a finite amount of time. A white hole will take infinite amount of time to leave the white hole, but correspondingly, the particle will see that as a finite amount. So you will see a white hole emit, but the particle. So you white holes, you will see the stuff come out of the white hole, but that thing took forever to get there.
Yeah.
So it's the opposite. When you go into the black hole, you're like, this is fine. This has only took me like an hour. But for the particle leaving the white hole, it's like, this took me infinite years. But for you, it's like, hey, thing left the white hole. I think that's how that goes. And then eternal black holes, the idea is that it's been there forever and will always be there, because the moment that the black hole was, well, it always was, because time is the aspect of this of probability. So everything happened at once, and the black hole was already always there, and then time was layered on top with probability or with entropy, and making time potentially a human concept, which
I have words on a human concept, but
okay,
so the statement of this is a human concept. So laws are a human concept. Morality is a human concept. Like, there's a whole bunch of things, and it's to basically excuse not following them, or it's like, oh, your time's just a human concept.
Well, not at all. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Well, no, I'm saying, but just this has. I'm not saying your case, but this has been used in media before.
But I don't
statements, and we are human, therefore.
But I don't think that dismisses anything about it. You can say something's a human concept, and that doesn't mean anything other than...
Well, I'm not saying it dismisses it. It's a human concept, but we're human, so we're using it.
Yes.
But people have used it as a dismissal in weird...
But you can't use that as a dismissal, because you are saying that this is... It doesn't make any sense, right?
Yep,
because...
exactly. That's what my frustration is. Like, well, yeah, but time's just a human concept, so whatever. It's a human concept. We are human.
Yeah, but... It's not even the fact that you can be a transhuman and ignore it. It's if you don't follow this, you are no longer human. So I guess that's transhumanism in a sense. But human conceptions must be used by humans. It's very circular to ignore, right? Because... So what's dismissed? When have people dismissed time? Can I have an example?
Well, sometimes they'll be jokingly like say, "Oh, you're late," and it's like, "Yeah, but time's just a human concept, so relativity of me being late doesn't matter because it's just all made up by us."
The relativity.
I mean, it's just all made up for us, so I'm not actually late or whatever.
But you would be late within the conception of time. So you'd have to dismiss the idea of lateness. So instead of saying time's a human concept, you could say lateness is a human concept.
Yeah, but they say time's a human concept.
Right, but you could... If you're dismissing time, you're dismissing the aspect of lateness with it. So you may as well say lateness doesn't exist, right?
And I would be more satisfactory with that than saying time's a human concept as a dismissal.
But but human achievement is done within time. So, but no one is, they're making a joke, right? No one dismisses time.
I hope they're making a joke.
But why wouldn't they be making, like, you can't just dismiss...
Because they're a nihilist millennial.
Right, but even then, their dismissal could be... Okay, so then that isn't a dismissal of the concept of time, that's a dismissal of caring about time, right? Because if you say...
But they could just say, I don't care about time, instead of dismissing the concept of time.
Right, but what they're also saying is, I don't care about you, right?
Yeah.
Because if things don't matter, then they don't care about you, they don't care about their job. You could fire them. I mean, they wouldn't care.
I don't like it even as a joke.
Why?
It just rubs me the wrong way.
Because
I'm human, and human concept is still a real thing.
Right, but...
So basically the statement of which is saying it's just a human concept is dismissing humanity as valid.
Right, but... So how humor works is you... So there's many kinds of humor. One of them is irony.
Let us not explain humor.
Well, I think it might be necessary, because how irony works is you say something which isn't true, and the incongruity is funny. For example, you could say something along the lines of... David Chappelle had the one where he said... if you're a pedophile, you shouldn't go for the ugly kids. You should go for, like, that kid from Home Alone. Like, that sort of, right? Now, that is horrible, the idea of pedophilia after going after someone. The joke is that you shouldn't do that. And that's irony. And so, when you're saying, oh, time's just a human concept, you're calling attention to the human condition, and you're saying, look at this thing we are in together, and that I have assumed the position of God, and I am dismissing everything. Isn't that funny?
No, it's not.
But you do understand humor, right?
Yes. But that is not a funny joke.
But it is. That's... All jokes are funny. Is that right? I think that's right. You aren't the divine dictator of humor.
No, but I am when it comes to time. Anyhow, is it? Black holes?
I don't know, man. Maybe we should just restart the black hole section. Just feels a little disconnected. So black holes. Let's walk through the steps, okay? So, entropy. Yes, we did that. Yeah. I feel like I spent too much time figuring it out on my own rather than talking about it.
It's interesting.
I don't know, you didn't have anything to say, so...
That's because if I interrupted you, you might start over again. You're in a state where adding stuff to the conversation was more of a hindrance than an addition.
Right, but you weren't able to add anything.
Yes.
Even if that was because of my... just...
Listening to someone figure something out can be interesting.
Maybe.
So I have an idea, a theory, quandary, a thought. But this episode's going to be very hard to edit.
Are you going to say your thought?
I'm waiting for acknowledgement.
I was waiting for you to say it.
I want you to be listening.
I listen with my ears, not my eyes.
Freak.
If I point my ear at you, that means I'm listening.
I don't want to share my idea anymore.
Okay, fine. I'll talk about something else.
No, I do. So, from playing Outer Wild, with the stupid quantum rocks and the quantum moon, how it disappears.
Before you continue, let's say incredibly heavy spoilers, because Outer Wilds is a game that you do want zero spoilers for if you're ever going to play.
Okay.
And if you like Breath of the Wild, you will like Outer Wilds. And so, if you liked Breath of the Wild, don't listen to this until you've played Outer Wilds.
Basically, the concept and reference to you with the quantum thing is what I was getting into. So that's just the first step. So quantum conversation, we talked about waveforms collapsing, and a thing can exist in two possible different spaces until you observe it, and then it exists in one, right?
It exists in infinite possible spaces, but then it collapses and exists in one.
So, and this can be based off observation. So there's this whole thing when it comes to the supernatural and the spooky, right? So like vampires, you can't take pictures of them, is one concept. Or another one is you take a picture of the ghost and you don't get a picture of the ghost, or you take a picture and you get a picture of the ghost, but you didn't see the ghost. So the picture of the ghost is what you observed there, or you observe the ghost and the picture doesn't work. The ghost light of wherever, that train thing, might mess with my ideas a bit. But anyways. And then there's this whole thing of the camera stopped working when I was hearing these weird sounds and like the monster ran by, or the camera broke, or it wasn't recording at this exact moment. And, oh, why do we never have footage of these things? Or like we have the footage, but then no one saw it and we just have the footage. So what if there is this, or even one person saw it and one person didn't? So what if there's like a quantum limitation on certain things?
And by quantum, you mean...
Like an observation. So, the camera can observe it, or
You're
you
abusing that word.
Sorry. Yes, I am. Quantum is an excellent abusive point. Fine. It's a superposition.
Okay.
Exists.
Yeah.
In which there can only be one observer.
Yeah.
And so if the camera observes it...
Yeah.
Then you can't.
Yeah.
Or if you are going to observe it... then the camera stops working for that amount of time, so it can't observe it.
Now, as I understand superpositions, that isn't how they work.
Yeah.
The superposition is a physical position. Yeah. So if you exist in that area, you'll act as if an object in that area is.
So I'm using superposition wrong because it actually means something. I'm trying to come up with a new concept of basically...
But you're trying to extrapolate a superposition.
Yeah.
To the idea of an object that only exists in one physical space, but its superposition is not about its position, but about its observation.
Yeah,
so it'd be a super emission, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or a super observability.
A quantum ghost?
Super observability, maybe?
Yeah,
because it can only be observed by one person.
Yeah.
At a time, or by a small group of people, potentially, if they're observing from the same position or mind frame or time, whatever it might be. And it's...
Because I was just thinking about, like, with the the camera didn't work. Or, I didn't bring a camera with me, I usually would. Or, like, there's a whole bunch of cases.
Right, so then you're going backwards and forwards in time as well with this.
Because... it's so observed, like the rule of observation is it can only be observed.
And at that point, I don't think you're allowed to play with scientific terms. Sorry, you can use scientific terms. But what I mean by that is a lot of healers, let's say, faith healer type people, will use the ideas of crystal vibration or matrices to excuse their crystal healing. They'll say this is in line with physics. You use the specific hertz of 440 hertz. Or whatever it might be. So
let's ignore the back and forward in time and just the you observed what the camera didn't.
I'm not actually dismissing what you said. What I'm saying is if you do the backwards and forwards in time, and I could be wrong here, but I think I'm not, you go so far out of our understanding of physics that you cannot use it to justify your position. Okay. Where if you said something like Bigfoot observations are based on a superposition of Bigfoot, that falls perfectly within our understanding. Our understanding, however, can be entirely wrong.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with what you're saying. But it isn't necessary to draw on the parallel of quantum at that point, I think.
Okay.
If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to go from the reference point of observation.
As an analogy, it works.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is, what if ghosts can only be observed by a single observer at a time?
Yeah, well, even more so than that, which I think, to the credibility of ghosts, and maybe a lot of supernatural things, is they are... I don't know much about parallel realities, like the multiple reality theory, but something math says it works.
That's...
what you just went over, right? With the gate?
No, that's something else.
Okay.
So, parallel reality is just the one of the resolutions possible for Schrodinger's cat.
Oh, okay.
So what you say is that... So superpositions, right?
Yeah.
So imagine a bell graph.
Yeah.
Made up of pictures. Like you know how projectors have slides you stick in them. So imagine a bell graph made of slides from a projector.
Yeah.
Right? So you have them all stacked together and they form this bell curve.
Mm-hmm.
The curve in the what happens when you... So this is... And all of these pictures are almost the same. And the closer together they are, the more similar they look. Yeah. And so this is an object in what we understand to be its actual form. Not a physical object like a human, but this is what happens to a atom. So this is what an atom looks like. It looks like an infinite amount of pictures that are all very similar to each other the closer they are to each other in this bell curve-ish shape. And what happens is when you make a measurement of that atom, you grab a picture at random, and you're more likely to grab the ones, let's say the bigger ones, because it's forming a bell curve. So the ones at the tip of the bell curve are the biggest ones. Yeah. So you're more likely to grab a big one just because of its surface area. So what you do is you grab a random slide from this bell curve, and that is what you look at. And so that is where the atom is. And so so that's all that superposition and observation is an object's actual form is an infinite amount of positions. Yeah. And when you observe it, you grab one of those positions from it, and you look at it. And through the act of measuring, okay, so this is the frame I pulled out. Yeah. That is the only one you are interacting with, which is really fascinating, actually, because that means you aren't interacting with the object, you're interacting with an idea of the object in a way. Yeah. But that's how the rules of the universe are made, which I think ties really well into the idea that the universe is a hologram. Not as in there's everything's fake, but we are a projection on a screen, essentially. Because all it takes to... that observation isn't just sight. That is physical law. By grabbing one at random, you are saying this portion of your infinite being is bound to physical law. Yeah. So what a parallel universe is all the other frames you didn't grab. Yeah. And so you yourself, because you are measuring yourself constantly, you're always grabbing a frame. But all those frames you don't grab are also you grabbing a frame. Right. And so what one of the... This is only one of the parallel universe theories, is that your entire superposition exists at all times. Yeah. At changing based on that. And another one is that every time you are forced to collapse a superposition, the universe splits into multiple. Yeah. Or you diverge off of that. And then another parallel universe idea is just that there's universes stacked on each other that are very similar. And so these frames in my example, of these slides in my example, each one is its own universe playing on its own. Yeah.
So let's go with the ones all stacked on each other. Yeah. Because that one's fun. Because you can get some pretty crazy things in between them.
And so, just to be clear, with the black hole idea, each one of these universes would have another accessible universe through a black hole. Yeah. Now, what that universe is a really interesting question. Does that mean that every universe is a dual universe? Or does that mean that the only way to interact with the rest of your superposition as a collapsed position yourself is through a black hole? Mm-hmm. So another way to look at it is, if you go through this black hole and explore the entire universe, all of its time and all of its space, will you find yourself there? Or is it entirely different altogether? Yeah. It's really, really interesting idea.
So with the stacks, ghosts, and maybe even other supernatural things, but let's just go with ghosts for now, and like the camera not working, or it takes a picture, is you're accidentally observing the other universe.
Through whatever means it might be. Yes, okay.
Because of the position you're in. Yeah. And so that's why the camera didn't work to take a picture, or you take the picture and you get that creepy little girl in the background, and it's not a ghost film.
Yeah. So the idea of a ghost could just be that you're watching someone live out their life in a different universe, and you're not noticing them. Or they're noticing you even, and you're kind of weird to them, or you're fully into their world, or their world's overlaid on yours. Something along that lines. Yeah, that is...
And then because we're really, really good at finding patterns, we'll go, well, Old Lady Smith died in this area, so it must be her ghost.
Well, it could even be Old Lady Smith, because she might not have died in the other universe, or the other universe could be 10 years in the past, and so she's still alive there. And then you're observing. So that's one of the main ideas about ghosts, is that they're a parallel universe leaking over into our own, crossing over.
That was my thought on why sometimes only one person sees them, or the camera doesn't work, is maybe it is actually only observable from one position.
And that's... Now, only observable from one position What you could say is that in order to observe these, you yourself might have, or the camera, might have slipped slightly into this universe rather than that universe coming into your own.
Yeah.
And if you're with someone else, they might not have slipped as far.
Yeah.
And so you might be able to see more of this universe than they. Mm-hmm. Or the camera might have slipped in, but not you.
Yeah.
Or you, but not your camera. Because...
Well, that could be a case of when only one person observes, they slip in a bit. Whereas a bunch of people see all of the ghosts at once. The ghost has slipped into theirs.
Yeah, and so the differences could be... So, let's say Bigfoot could be the other universe being coming into our universe. Yeah. Whereas a ghost could be us going slightly into the other universe.
Yeah.
And so Bigfoot is seeing a bunch of ghosts in the forest and freaking out.
Yeah.
It's like...
That's why he's always hiding from them.
And also that's why we can't find Bigfoot, even if we did a perfect search, because they're in a different universe. Mm-hmm. So that is one way to look at it. And another thing on that is... What was your idea just before the Bigfoot story?
Oh, so because I was listening to this one thing about these guys hearing a ghost.
Yeah.
And they all heard it walking around. They just heard its footsteps. And so it was a bunch of people observing it. And so it saw the ghost is just coming in here, sometimes walking about, or we're going there. That was the main thing.
But only one person saw it or something? Or
well, no one saw it.
Okay, because there's been examples...
Well, there's another case of the time slip.
Of the two women that...
Yeah, you saw the video. Or you heard about it?
Yeah, no, I saw a video on it. I don't know if it was the same one you saw, but it's one of the... I think it's the most famous case of seeing ghosts or time slips or whatever it might be.
Yeah, but there's there's like one big glaring difference, or two.
Yeah, so one of them, they only partially saw a woman, where the other one saw her in vivid detail. Yeah. And then one of them didn't see someone at all, and they just walked around them, though.
Yeah.
So yeah. Did the video you see, it also had a time slip with these cowboys that appeared and tried to get these kids? And,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was probably the same video then.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that case in general is... I think I was looking that up even later in relation to the black holes, possibly? I can't remember. But it came up somewhere. Yeah, and it is one of the most famous cases. But one of the biggest criticisms about that whole thing is the women's story becomes more and more fantastical every time they retold it. Mm. That could have been them becoming more comfortable, more confident.
Yeah.
It could also be that the event happened and then they are falsifying their memories as it went on.
Yeah.
And it could be that they made up a story and it got more and more crazy.
So, on this weird observational thing...
Sorry, what?
So, on the weird observational thing...
There we go.
And the time slip thing...
You know there's a chromosome, I think it's a chromosome, that if you're missing you can't speak? Like you can't comprehend language? You can be a totally normal person, totally normal intelligence, but you can't comprehend language.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I was worried I just lost mine.
Anyway,
it's not a chromosome, it's a gene. Sorry, but yeah.
So I was thinking, a lot of people, to a certain extent, experience supernatural things. Like there's some skeptical people who explain away by everything or different ideas, right?
I think I'm having a stroke.
Why, am I not speaking right?
I don't know.
Okay, so
let's try again, and I'll listen harder and see if it was me.
All right. So, a lot of people talk about experience of observing ghosts or supernatural things.
Okay. Yes.
To a certain extent. And skeptics will dismiss their experiences or other people's experiences. Such as our dad's house has that bloody door that'll open and close on its own.
Does it?
Yeah.
Where?
To the porch. It will like swing open and close.
Does it?
Yeah.
I've never noticed that.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, that's what I wanted to talk about. I remember. Yeah. It's related, but yeah.
Anyways. Or just like some experiences like your Sky People incident with the Ravens.
Sky People.
So not the Sky People.
The Sky People was me going crazy.
Yeah.
No, the Shapeshifter.
Yeah, the Shapeshifter chasing you.
Yes.
Something different.
The Skin Stealer was chasing me. Yeah. Yes. The Skinwalker.
So I was thinking about, because I'm quite big into like monsters and people's observation on these things, and like, oh, was there a Bigfoot or like ghosts and stuff. And I used to dismiss ghosts because I was scared of them. And at a certain point now...
You dismissed them because you were scared of them?
Yeah, that's a way to cope with it. To come up with logical explanations for them.
Yeah.
Because I was really scared of them.
Interesting.
But now, my concept is, unless the ghost is exerting a supernatural force on me that makes me physically feel fear, I'm probably going to charge the thing to get a better look at it. And that might be a really bad idea, but...
Yeah, depending on how much you can interact with them. Because if it is a time slip that you were observing... So that's the thing. The ghosts might not exist at all, but the experience of seeing ghosts might.
Yeah. So anyways...
Well, it does.
I I was trying to reflect. Have I ever experienced something supernatural?
Mm.
And then I was thinking, have I ever experienced something supernatural with another person?
Well,
And there's one case I remember. I want your thoughts on it again now it's been so many years because it's right in my memory.
so down in that dip over there, we went in.
We followed our dog down.
For about 5 minutes and we came out like 2 hours later.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was that's why I watched the time slip video.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought.
I wanted to see if it was similar.
That's more akin to entering the Fae realm, though, or like.
But I did wonder, and it's interesting you brought it up because I wondered if the experience happened at all or if I was remembering something that didn't happen. And I'm still not sure, even with your confirmation that you experienced it as well, because we could both be misremembering an event. For example, we went in to a sort of secluded area.
Yeah.
And if a cloud passed over the sun and it appeared much later when we came out. And then we took that as our first thought of time could have passed, right? And we didn't have anything to deconfirm that. And then our memory of that becomes stronger than the event itself, which might have been quite small. And I wondered if it had happened at all to some extent, but it's interesting you brought it up because I did remember that as well, yes.
Yeah, well, that was one of my thoughts.
Because what made us think there was a time slip?
Well, as I remember it, and this could be the risk of falsifying memories.
But if you say it and I try to keep my own, then we can see if there's...
So, as I remember it, we followed our dog down there.
Okay.
Because Haley went down there.
Okay.
And we wanted to see what Haley was up to. So she'd go down there several times, so we wanted to go down there. And so we went down there, and the lighting did change when we came out. And we were only down there for about 5 minutes. And this is where it gets a little hazy, because there's our confusion of coming out and the light being different. But also, I think there's a certain extent that either we came back pretty quickly to the house, and we were told that we'd been gone for a bit, or it was that we were actually going for a walk with our mother and someone else, and when we came back out, they were coming back from the walk. And so they'd done their walk, and it'd been much farther than the time we'd been down there. And again, another could be possible false memory, is we were told, oh, you played down there for quite a long time, and we were confused because we were only down there for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's what like
those sound possible, but I don't remember those specifics.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying there's two possibilities, and that's what makes me even doubt it to a new extent now.
There is also so there is a lot of cases of children going into the woods and coming out hours or even days later and not noticing any time has passed. Children, not adults mostly. Sometimes adults, but very rarely. And an explanation I see that isn't brought up very often is epilepsy. Because child epilepsy is a condition on its own. It's not the same as adult epilepsy. And even even adult epilepsy can happen to children, I think. But there is this very specific kind of epilepsy called child epilepsy. And what happens is the child just stops observing the world for about 15-20 minutes. Or whatever the time may be.
However, us being 4 years apart in age and both...
Well, the fact that we were there at the same time is the issue there. And also there was a dog with us. Like, if the dog suddenly vanished, that would be one thing. And if it was one of us going down, that would be another thing.
Yeah.
But if it was both of us, that doesn't work as... It would be... The chances would be very low.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't remember what made us feel that. And I wonder if it was just even a feeling. Like, we went down and we came back up and we thought, feels like time has passed.
So, on another thing, which is slightly less, and I know you got confused by it, is there are parts of our property which are evil. And, I don't... You were there one time, like, where that burnt area?
Yeah.
Like, I really don't like being there?
Yeah, but they all have something in common, which, I mean, you're aware of, right? Which is, they're all burn sites.
Yeah.
So that could be it on its own.
Yeah, it could be. Well, no, some of them I don't mind the burn sites. There's certain burn sites I don't like.
But you're in a place where things don't grow, which, I mean, that doesn't look... That's off-putting, to say the least, on its own. But I don't know if I've had a feeling of them being evil.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's a different experience I've had. Like,
and someone else's experience... Another thing to keep in mind, it's almost not fair, but I don't even know what you call it. You're vulnerable to schizophrenia, let's say.
Me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what you call that, because you're not schizophrenic, but you're vulnerable to it because you have had schizotypal episodes
Yes.
in the past. And I don't fully understand schizotypal stuff, but that could probably extend to ideas about places.
Yeah.
But something to also, you don't, if you have a label for something, that doesn't dismiss the thing. By which I mean, people have had bad feelings about places throughout all of time. Yeah. And now because we can call them schizophrenic, it doesn't mean we know what schizophrenia is. It could be that schizophrenic people are people that can see things other people can't because they're actually there.
Yeah.
And the way so I think glasses are a great example of the mental health system. So mental health problems are, I've said this many times on the podcast even, deviations from the norm which negatively impact your life.
Yes.
Right. So glasses, 20/20 vision is considered perfect vision. The average human vision isn't 20/20. There isn't an average human vision there isn't a mode standard vision. The average, there's always an average to something, of course. The average for vision is, I believe, slightly less than 20/20. So what we've done, actually, is not... When you give someone glasses, you're not fixing a problem they have. Like, if someone has a limp and you give them a cane, you're fixing a problem they have.
Yeah.
When you give someone glasses, you're not actually fixing a problem they have. You're saying society is built around 20/20 vision, therefore everyone needs to have 20/20 vision. It is a collectivist... what do you call those things?
Zeitgeist?
Maybe Zeitgeist works.
It's
a cultural zeitgeist of 20/20 vision.
Yeah, it's the collective cultural idea.
Society doesn't work unless everyone has 20/20 vision.
Yeah.
Society doesn't work unless nobody's schizophrenic. However, that doesn't mean that schizophrenia isn't a talent or a skill in of its own. Now, that doesn't also mean... There's a lot of people that say, my blindness isn't a disability, my whatever. I don't want to say that, because schizophrenia can cause people to harm others or themselves, suicide, all that kind of thing.
It's very broad the amount of things that can happen in schizophrenia for it to be categorized in one.
I think autism might be a better thing to look at, because I was thinking about this. I saw I think it was on MXR video, there's an autistic car wash.
Yeah.
A bunch of autistic guys. And I was thinking, 100 years ago, they wouldn't be autistic. They'd be normal guys with like weird hobbies and habits.
Yeah.
Even 40 years ago, 20 years ago, they would probably just be weird guys. Mm-hmm. Autism's very weird. Well, autism, ADHD, I think, are two of the main examples of something that isn't actually, I don't know if they're necessary to label. Like, it can be useful for talking about yourself and talking about other things. But, let's say some people like chicken more than they like beef, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to create a mental category for people that prefer beef over chicken. Let's say 85% of people prefer beef. You're not going to create a mental category called, like, aviophiles for people that like chicken, right?
Yeah, well...
And autism... Now, extreme autism can actually be debilitating.
Yeah, well...
But autism's a massively wide spectrum. And a lot of it is just... Like, I think... I could be wrong here, but I think everyone has some degree of autism. Mm-hmm. And so we just chose a cutoff point and said... This is, and maybe that cutoff point is where you don't integrate in society properly.
Well, so the things I have...
But the difference between personality and mental illness is really interesting.
So, this high school we went to had the zone. And those kids, or young adults, the people in there...
Special needs class.
Yeah, special needs class. They benefited from that, I'm pretty certain.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. That was the hope. And with dyslexia, so there's a bit of a schism within people who have dyslexia, and I fall on one side of it, which is some people say we shouldn't call it a learning disability, we shouldn't treat it like a learning disability or whatever, because it's a learning difference.
Yeah.
But
on the other hand,
I refute that is everyone's trained to teach a certain way. The society is run like this. Observationally, we do things en masse like this.
And I think writing, right?
Yeah.
Communication is a massive part of our lives and jobs and necessity for that. And you can say, well, dyslexic people are people that have troubles on the communication aspect of life.
Yeah.
Okay, but if they want to be a part of the rest of society, they need to learn
Yes.
the communication skills that they are lacking.
And there's tools they can use, and people who need extra tools that everyone else don't have a problem to some extent that needs tools to fix it.
Yeah, so Down syndrome is similar in some ways because I don't think there are any... I could be wrong here. But I don't...
Also, I just want to quickly say, I do not want to be a victim of dyslexia. I'm not saying don't take away my victim status or whatever, but it's more of it impacts me to an annoying point which other people don't get.
So in a different world, you could send the dyslexics off to be the hunters or the architect. Maybe you could send dyslexic people off to be engineers rather than storytellers, let's say.
Yeah.
In medieval times, a dyslexic person might be the architect for the castle, and someone who could write well would be the scribe.
Yeah.
In our modern time, you need to be able to do a bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people say dyslexia isn't a disability, they're almost calling for a return to that medieval time.
And there's also this,
which isn't necessarily wrong.
There's also the secondary level of when people say, oh yeah, I'm dyslexic as well, or I have this. Yes, but everyone also has levels of dyslexia, like much similar. Like some people basically not, it's weird categorized, but if you do the dyslexic test, a lot of people will end up in the 10th percentile and the 5th percentile. And so it's like, yes, you are dyslexic. However, as someone in the 90th percentile,
that also gets something very interesting.
Dyslexics.
So, psychopaths, autistic people, dyslexic people, all have the capability to overcome their difference through other means.
Yes.
And the interesting thing about that is, I don't know, Down syndrome is very, very nice from a psychologist perspective because you can point to it. You can say, here is an extra chromosome on the 23rd chromosome. It's very obvious. I don't know if dyslexia has an equivalent. I think it actually does. There's a gene involved, I think.
Yes, it's also the middle of the head. So the bridge is different.
Okay. So there might be something you can point to with dyslexia. But you said there's a dyslexic test, right?
Yeah.
Now let's say that I am extremely dyslexic. I'm more dyslexic than you.
Yeah.
That could be true from a physiological standpoint. But if I had different ways of overcoming it, or I was introduced to ideas in a different order that worked for me, and I take the test and I score lower on dyslexia than you, it gets interesting because what you would say from a psychological perspective would be, I don't have dyslexia and you do, because psychology only cares about the symptoms.
Yes, exactly. So even on that level, when it comes to my psychological assessment that I took, which I have no psychological disabilities on that assessment. And this is basically say yes or no strong feelings. A lot of psychological tests are like this, and this one had something like 300 questions in it. And then also during the whole time that I was working with the therapist, wherever they were, she was also observing me and checking for signs of anything. And so even though in the test I said I have experienced visual hallucinations before, part of the tests ask you, has this impacted you in any way? Does this make reality difficult? And I said, it minorly impacted me in this one case because it heightens stress. Because when you're stressed and you're seeing cars and shadow men that aren't real, that scares the living daylights out of you.
You hope you aren't real?
Yes. Yes. Oh, good God. Just coming out of the government building, walking over to my car, putting the key in the door, looking over my shoulder, and seeing this extremely tall figure made of blackness leaning over its own car and reaching for the key. And then it's like, what, can you look at properly? And then it's not there, but the car is. I ran around to the other side of the car, unlocked it on that side, got into the car, locked all the doors, then got out of the parking lot as fast as I could away from that spot.
Bloody racists. Just get some angry comments. The Society for the Promotion of Shadow Men Welfare will be
Umber entities.
the Society for Promotion of Umber Entity
Yeah,
Welfare.
Shadow Men's is a derogatory term.
We'll be sending you a very angry letter, and we'll see you in court.
Yeah, but again, so I had like maybe 3 ticks towards whatever hallucination thing, and you probably need about 20 for it to say this is bad.
Oh, that's another thing actually. Vision. So if I do have dyslexia, I don't think it's as bad as yours.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I do. I can read in my dreams, which I don't know if that's a sign of dyslexia or a sign of the opposite of dyslexia. Because one of the signs that you're dreaming is that you can't read.
Yeah.
I can, but it's a nightmare. The letters move, they teleport, they change. I hate it. It's horrible.
There actually is an opposite of dyslexia as well.
But I also sometimes get words completely mixed up, the order of the letters. But that might just be something people do. I don't know. However, with vision, I do know that if you took my eyes and gave them to someone else, it could potentially blind them. Because from a light diffusing pattern, my vision is awful. However, and this is true of everyone, vision isn't just your light diffuse. So there's people who have similar, levels of unable to see as me. Who they can't operate without their glasses. I can operate without my glasses. I could probably even drive without my glasses as long as like there was nothing smaller than like say a teenager that got in front of the car. I could see anything bigger than a teenager probably fine. Because vision is actually not just light. It is also your brain's interpretation of the light. So when they give you that eye test where they show you all the letters, and I see a blob on it, and he says, "What letter is that?" I said, well, that could be an E, C, or G, but I already did the G on the bigger one, and the font made it look like that, so this is clearly not a G. And a C would be less likely in this because there was just a C or something, so it's probably an E. And so I used to worry when I was younger that I was cheating, but that's actually how everyone does it, to an extent, because vision is actually 2 parts. It's what you see and it's what you interpret. And if you see just a smear, but you interpret it perfectly, then you don't need glasses. So it is actually, that's another funny one. Now, I'm not saying my vision's actually better than other people with my eyes. It's just, if you don't have to work with what I have to work with, you're not used to it, then you're going to be blinded, because my eyes on paper are terrible.
So the opposite of dyslexia, which I don't know if you would have because it's very, very weird, is... a lot of times opposites aren't opposites in the way people think. Like the opposite of chaos isn't order. I mean, could be, but it's the opposite of like Eve, the consuming mother, is the tyrannical father.
Right.
It's not the good mother.
Right, yeah.
So people with the opposite of dyslexia, I'm probably getting some of this wrong. They can't comprehend objects in 3D. At all. To varying levels. They have a lot of trouble interacting with 3D environment. They have a lot of troubles with color. So
right, it's because dyslexia, you have troubles with orientation.
So they have a lot of troubles with color.
But you have troubles with orientation because you're able to flip. Is it any harder for you to read upside down than right side up?
Barely.
Yeah, I wondered, because that would make sense.
Yeah, barely. No, I can read in a lot of different directions quite easily.
One thing I noticed that was weird was I can read upside down, backwards. I can read mirrored writing just fine, right? But I had a shirt on, and I was looking in the mirror, and I couldn't tell if the letters were D's or B's in the mirror. Because I can read in all the directions. But once you reversed it, I didn't know if it was a D or a V. It was kind of funny.
So it's weird because dyslexia is... I know a lot of people want to give superpowers to, so to say.
Yeah, like in Fatal, they have retard strength.
Yeah.
Which is horrible.
Yeah.
To be clear.
So, and dyslexia is a bit unfortunate in that way, because...
Well, autism as well. Yeah. It does have that trade-off.
There is that trade-off, yeah, definitely. So, like, some dyslexic people, like people with extremely bad dysgraphia, which is a bizarre thing in itself, and it's like you can't write, you can't do a bunch of things. Like, some people with super bad dysgraphia, for some reason, have perfect memory of where they've traveled.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that. Because I have a friend, he was here very recently, He'd be great to have on the podcast someday, actually. I don't know if he's allowed to. He's the lawyer guy that we talked about, and then it deleted the whole podcast just by talking about him. So I've never talked about him on the podcast. Yeah. But he was here recently, and I signed a book for him, and I said, I haven't written in so long, my writing's almost as bad as yours, because his writing is horrible. Yeah. But he has a near photographic memory. So, which is really interesting.
There's a story about a kid that I read, and it was meant to try to help me cope with, like, when learning dyslexia is one of those stories. And so the kid's, like, a little weird, he can't write in school, he can't do a bunch of stuff. And this is actually a true story. And so his friends came to his house, and he was worried, he was embarrassed, because when they went into his room, they're overwhelmed by how bloody colorful it was. He had posters everywhere, and, like, toys and tons of stuff.
It looked like a Japanese website.
Sure.
You ever seen them?
Yes. And then they went for a hike. He and his friends, because he like slowly became friends with them, and they got lost, and they couldn't find the way back. And everyone's panicking, and couldn't find a way back. And it's like, that tree over there looks like a dolphin, and I know we passed that. It's like everyone's like, okay. So they followed him. It's like, and that thing there looks like that, and that thing there looks like that, and that thing there looks like that, and that thing there looks like that. And he basically led them back perfectly home, where everyone's lost and had no idea what they were. And so he just his spatial memory of, okay, this was this step, this was this step, and the kid had very bad dysgraphia, and so that was one of the things. He's also like really good at imagining things and objects in 3D space, all that stuff. So the trails exist in dyslexia, and so the opposite as well. So people with opposite dyslexia, or maybe it's like incredibly low score in dyslexia, can write perfectly, and it's bad that they can write perfectly, because everything they do, like all their writing, will have no variation. So it's like the ideal of a school teacher.
Yeah.
Besides, if how they write is bad, then it will be bad forever, because it's consistency. So
I mean, my writing is
well,
I do it a lot, and it
but they're so a lot of writing will have inconsistency. Like your R will be bigger and they'll be smaller. So if they write their R, that's how they write their R, and they can train themselves to write it differently. But it's very, very hard for them to train themselves to write differently. So, and with reading, giving them the rules of reading, they can basically instantly like pick up reading and do it super well, and then they can't progress in reading anymore. It's very hard for them to go any further in learning, because it's a cap in their brain, because you need a bit of whatever dyslexia is to figure out new words and to get farther into it and come up with ideas. And so it's very, very weird, the opposite, and it's far rarer, because I think it's probably just an absence of...
Yeah, well, the other thing is, even if a lot of people have it, you wouldn't know, because it works with society as society is right now.
Yeah. But just they have... Another thing that's categorized of it is they have a ridiculously hard time doing any sort of art. It's not even like, oh, I'm a bad drawer. Like, they could be a good drawer, but you show them a pear, they'll look at the pear and they'll draw a pear. But you tell them to draw a pear and they don't have a pear, it won't work.
I mean, that sounds like me. I've shown you my drawings before, right? I can draw one-to-one objects without tracing them. Yeah. Like, I can draw a hand or a bush one-to-one, like each leaf. I can get to the exact size without tracing it. Like, I can lie them against each other and they'll be the exact same size. But you tell me to draw that bush from memory or something, or make up a bush, and I'll draw like a cloud.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it does sound like me to a degree. But the interesting thing is, you could call dyslexia a disability. I think that'd be fair. But in a time when 90% of people were illiterate, it wasn't a disability.
Illiterate to an extent. They didn't speak Latin. They didn't read and write Latin.
I'm thinking more in a time where people didn't write.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So if that was the medieval ages, if that was before cuneiform tablets existed, whatever it might be. If a hunter-gatherer society where they're not doing any writing, that disability doesn't exist.
Yes.
And you might have people that are better at trailblazing.
Yeah. However, that disability, I mean, would have a small problem, even on my level of, I mean, someone wants you to, like, cut a straight line in a piece of cloth. I can't do that. But then it's just, that guy's all thumbs when it comes to working with those things.
Yeah, he's not the cloth guy. He's the trail dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the dude that we send into a little depression, and he disappears for 4 days and comes out and says, "Why'd you guys leave me?" I think what happened was your dyslexic aura just overwhelmed the area, and it sucked us into a white hole. Well, that's another thing. If time is a concept for humans.
Sorry, just the dyslexia, or some people like your dyslexia is contagious. And I wonder if, not just like it's contagious, but they see you write poorly and then the person's just so used to copying what they do that they get messed up.
So I don't think this is the case with dyslexia, but certain things like Tourette's are so fundamental to humans. This is personal experience. This isn't me drawing on any literature. But Tourette's is something, I think, that all people understand.
Yeah.
Just the desire to suddenly do something. Like suddenly flick out your hand or say a word. Something like that. I think that actually watching people with Tourette's for long enough could give you Tourette's. Maybe only temporarily. But I do think that it is actually transferable to maybe only temporarily. Yeah. But there are disorders that are just extremes, but not even extremes. They're just intensifications of human experience. Yeah. To the point where you just settle into. I was watching Sweet Anita. I was watching some of her videos where she was describing Tourette's, and I could feel it affecting me. I was able to rein it in, but I was thinking, oh, I should do this. I should do this, and it did make me wonder about Tourette's in general. So here's the thought, right? And I'll get the whole thought out because it's important the second half as well. Yeah. Tourette's could be entirely attention-seeking, which is something people with Tourette's hate hearing. Yeah. Because they don't want... it's not their choice, they say. Right. But they could be lying. It could be entirely attention-seeking. And lying, even, let's say. But I don't think the line's necessary. But let's say it's all attention-seeking and lying. You could still call whatever they're doing Tourette's a disorder. Because the fact that they're willing to disrupt their lives so severely and lie about it, they have a problem. Yeah. And we'll call it Tourette's. So even if it is just a variant of histrionics. So what got me on this line of thought? Dissociative identity disorder. Yeah. I watched a video with someone who has it, and it seems so incredibly fake. Unbelievably fake. The stuff she was doing, like changing her hair between personalities and changing her outfits, and it seems so incredibly fake. Changing her accent. Yeah. And I mean, that kind of dissociation, it is fake, right? You're faking a whole personality to avoid. But the problem comes in where people treat the personalities as people. But what they are is a person playing pretend to hide from a horrible, horrible event in their lives. Yeah. And what do you call that? Like, do you say this is multiple people? Because it's not. It's multiple personalities. But on the other hand, the brain appears to be two separate living entities working together. The master and the emissary. There seems to be a part of the brain that does all the thinking and then tells the other part of the brain, do this.
And there's those conditions where people choke themselves or their hands...
Yeah, alien hand syndrome.
Yeah, the hands that jerk.
And I think that's related to the idea that your brain is two living entities. So you are two entities. A human is two entities in one body. And that doesn't mean that there's another one of you. It means that you are two people. You're the sum of them. Yeah. The question is your consciousness made up, the consciousness you right now thinking, is there another one of you thinking right now totally different thoughts, screaming in impotence? Or is there another one of you completely fully in control as well thinking? Or are the two living entities sharing the same consciousness and all the same thoughts?
So for necromancy, as concept, which is, so someone dies, and when you die, there's the body, the mind, the soul, and the memory. Yeah. And so a necromancer actually doesn't get access to either the soul or the mind. And this was because I found that, this is my concept, I found that really wretched that they could get access to either of them. And that's partly why necromancy is so evil in a lot of concepts, is if they get the immortal soul, they drag it out of heaven. Or if they get my concept of the greater mind and they bend those to the will, that's awful.
That's what the Witch of Endor did. She called the spirit of Samuel or whoever. Like she called his spirit down. Yeah. So you could say it's more like getting a phone call up in heaven. Yeah. If you want.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the necromancer that imprisons the souls, and so that's kind of horrible. And so then the memory is ghosts. And so it's just a memory of you, but it's not actually your soul or whatever. It's a little ghost of you left behind, and there's the body or whatever. But just the concept of the soul and the mind
So the
are kind of two different things.
the teaching of the mysteries is that there is a spirit, mind, body, and soul. And the mind is your intellect.
Yeah.
And your body is your earthly
Vessel,
hellish form.
Yeah.
If earth is hell.
Yeah.
And your soul is everything, is your consciousness, everything that makes up you who you are.
Yeah.
And your spirit is your divine spark, your divine essence. And the idea is that your mind and your body are destroyed upon death. Your soul is reintegrated and your spirit rejoins the being. I think that's how it goes. And sounds kind of harsh, but a way I thought about it is if the spirit is the author, the soul is the character, and the mind is whatever intelligence the author decides to give the character.
Yeah.
And the body is the form the author gives the character. And if the character loses all those things and their soul is reintegrated, they're still there. Like I could have a conversation with Lord Glove, even though I created him.
Yeah.
But his personality is, his soul is his own.
Yeah.
Even though it's part of me, and I wholly encompass it, but it's still his own.
Yeah.
Whereas the spirit that gives him life is mine, not his.
Yeah.
And so you say, well, I don't want to lose my spirit because then I don't have a life. But I can animate him at will. But also, his existence has changed me.
Yeah.
It's like what I said before, where why do you put seeds in soil? So they grow.
Yeah.
And so Lord Glove is the fruit of that, let's say. It's kind of weird I always talk about Lord Glove because he's not the main character.
No, but he's the character you relate the most to.
Maybe. I don't think so. He's a bit evil.
Yeah, but he looks like you.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried about that. I have a character called Glade in a different story who's, well, he's not blonde. He's got dark hair. He might, but I keep thinking of him as blonde. And I also keep thinking of him as Glove, the GL, you know? And he's also not the main character, but he's sort of taking over in my mind. And maybe I should just kill him. I don't know. Actually, he's one of the few characters I think might be immortal in my series. Because it's the Necrosphere series where like anyone can die at any point, except basically him. Unfortunately, like he snuck his way into the position of safety.
I'm very annoyed by the image I've made for the immortal character who is Lord of Rain, because he is the most boring looking person. Like whenever I've tried to draw him or like create him in Hero Forge or whatever, he is so boring looking because he is like about average height male with short black hair and noble handsome features, but he's not super handsome, and he has just green eyes, so that's like the most distinct feature about him. He has green eyes, and besides that there's like nothing distinguishing about him. Like one design I had for him is he's missing a hand, but and how his immortality works, he actually can't be missing a hand, and so he's just like Lego Man number.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think it's normal, actually, what how Robert Jordan had the characters all distinct actors lined up for them, essentially.
Yeah.
It's quite impressive in some ways that he thought about his characters to that extent.
Yeah.
I actually realized before I finished No Limb Can Bear that I hadn't had any description of any character. So I sat down and I wrote out descriptions for every character and then put them into the book because I realized that they were all just names floating around in a void, names and ages, and so I had to describe them.
I had a problem when I was writing a bit of story where I was coming up with the characters' heights, which is they were all giants, and it's not like, oh, they're really tall people like Rand. No, they're like 7 foot tall. Like their shortest friend was about 6 feet tall, and I was like figuring out in my head, these people are all really, really tall. Like, that's ridiculously tall. And they're meant to be mountain men who are really big. But that was too big. Because it didn't make certain elements work of what I wanted. Because the shortest one among them is meant to be able to blend in with other races. And so I reduced all their heights. And still, like, their average height is really tall. And their tallest friend is 7 feet tall. And part of the idea is they're also really, really strong. Like, on average, these people are way stronger. And then I came up with the problem that the level that I have these people being way stronger and the population levels, and this is a warring nation. Why do they not rule the world? Because in my mind, I come up with scenes basically, and they might go into the story, and they might not. And at one point, one of the characters, she's like, I think she's 6'4" or something, and so she's already really big. And then she amuses a crowd of people because she's just trying to help out, and they're normal people, or like closer to us. She picks up a cart and can carry it without trouble, and so because they're just ridiculously strong, these people. And it's like maybe not a cart, but like she picks up. I have the idea she picks up a really heavy weight and can just carry it. And you're like, whoa, like, no way she should be able to carry it. And it's just this group of people are really strong. And I figure out the reason why. It's funny because I didn't even have to come up with the reason why, but the reason why they haven't taken over the world is because they have no wizards. Or mages. Like, the main character and his father are basically, and this woman who can pick things up, are the three mages in that whole kingdom. And the concept for wizards is, like, this guy can make a mountainside explode. Like, that's the only thing he can do. But he can make a mountainside explode. And that's going to have very, very big impacts to the whole world. Or another guy can release a cloud of darkness, and everyone who enters that cloud just dies. And that's the only thing he can do. But if you're on warring medieval factions, he's very scary. Even told quite, like...
Yes.
You just seem deep in thought. I hope you're deep in thought and you're just going, ah, in your brain.
I was trying to follow...
What I was saying?
Yes. Where it tied in. I'm trying to find a way to say this that doesn't sound mean. What the point of it all was.
Just to share the things that I thought was interesting about the writing. Because we were talking about writing.
Yes. And, well, we were talking about...
souls, but then we talked about writing, and so...
We're talking about the...
Right, the characters. Sorry. So, these characters, like, I haven't written much about them, but I sort of know who each one of them is as someone, and they each have their own little bits of life, and it gets more and more fleshed out to who they are.
Yes, the Wheel of Time, yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Like, each one of them has their own little bit of who they are.
And the whole...
souls. And that came from us talking about addictive psychological conditions. And to that point, I wanted to ask you a question, if you've caught back up with me.
No, but ask the question.
Have you watched American Psycho?
No.
Alright. So, when I watched it, it's about a guy who basically is a psychopath who goes insane. And I was a little worried after watching it, and it's kind of funny because watching it makes you observe a lot more behaviors that are psychopathic that you do, because the actor does such a good job in betraying them. And just reflecting on ourselves, and I think a lot of people experience that watching American Psycho, and that's probably part of the reason why the movie's so popular. Because the guy was such an amazing actor that embodied it so well, it can basically bring you into embodying that. But definitely the show makes you feel a little more like psychopathic after you watch it, just for a short while. And you think a bit in the mindset of the character. It's a very weird film.
Is that an older movie or a newer movie?
2000.
Is that Christian Bale?
Yes.
So
It's what made him famous.
Batman?
Yeah. It is what's made him famous. Is his method of acting from it. And like one of the things he was able to do was sweat on command.
Yeah.
Because there's a scene where the main character is so obsessed with certain things that's just kind of unnormal, and so people are showing each other their business cards, and someone basically shows him this gorgeous business card, and whatever's turn is gorgeous is, and he's looking at, it's like, look at the smooth lines, and like they're imprinted right, just going like the inner monologue, and the actor starts like sweating while staring at it, and it's like this person's like way into looking at this business card, and so it wasn't special effects or anything. He got so embodied in the mindset of like, that's the most beautiful business card I've ever seen, that he could like make himself sweat by staring at it.
And see, that's something that if society didn't have a place for them, they would be crazy people that we wouldn't know what to do with.
The actors?
Yeah. Actors.
Well, the method actors.
Yeah. Because that's the... well, that's basically... That's some form of cluster B type, right? Like, it's not within it, obviously, but... to feel the emotions of an imaginary person to the point where they physiologically affect you, that's...
Yeah, to embody them to the point, like there's these really creepy scenes in American.
Like he plays Jesus and starts sweating blood.
There's these really creepy scenes in American Psycho where it's basically the crack in the facade. So I know you've observed this before, but like when someone's just expression changes just briefly, you can see it, and it's very different from what's going on. So he very much, I think the term imbibed that for this character, where he has like this charismatic mask on his face, and he's talking to someone, and then as he's turning away, the mask breaks, and there's just this utter contempt and hatred on his expression. And then it goes back to normal very quickly, but because they're focusing on it, you can observe it. And he does that throughout the whole film, and points that's more obvious than others, like the mask breaking.
Movies are also 24 frames per second, so it would be easier to see.
Yeah, but it's like it was really freaky, where he's just like looking at this one person, he's being very charming. He's like, yeah, could you like just look after this thing for me? Because he's trying to get his bedclothes cleaned. And then as he's turning away, he's just like, he hates everyone and wants to kill everyone in that room. This is his expression. Then it goes back to normal and he walks off.
Was he Bane? Or was he Batman?
He was Batman.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a very different character than... I mean, he's a very handsome-looking fellow, so he could be Batman.
The line that gets me is, the psychopath goes insane. I wonder...
Oh, in American Psycho?
Well, that's what you said.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's...
Well, it's really interesting.
Is a psychopath already insane, or can they not go insane?
So let me. It's meant to be vague what happens in the show.
Yeah.
So basically, the main character is a high-flying Wall Street vice president of a company, and he's the son of the person. And there's a bunch of other vice presidents that he hangs out with, and they're basically all interchangeable. Like it's very, very hard to recognize which one's which. And he looks a lot like another character. And part of the plot is he's deceiving someone into thinking he's someone else so he can murder them. Like that's a part of his whole idea. So they think he's someone else.
So he basically has a temper tantrum when everything falls apart? Is that the...
Well, kind of. So he also has like tendencies of he wants to kill people, and he's very messed up and he doesn't feel human. He has very obsessed behaviors. And so this one guy basically keeps annoying him in different ways, and so he's planning to kill him. And then the guy can get reservations at a restaurant that no one can. So he basically snaps and he goes to a party, and then he gets that guy to a house. And he murders him with an axe. And like right before he kills him with the axe, the scene's very chilling but also very silly. And it made a song actually really popular, this whole scene, because he's basically talking about how great the song is. Anyways, he kills the guy, and he hides the body and does a bunch of stuff, and he's sort of almost caught. Then he starts killing more and more people throughout the film, and it gets more and more ridiculous till one point he's chasing a prostitute through his murder house where there's a bunch of bodies, and he's naked, and he's wielding a chainsaw and chasing her like Chainsaw Massacre, and she's running away, and then she's running down a staircase, and he drops the chainsaw while still running, and it kills her. And so that's sort of like, that's the height of the ridiculousness. And so he's killed a bunch of people, and she's running around screaming for help, and no one's coming to help her. So this scene's very ridiculous, like, what's going on here? And then he's losing it more and more, and he's, like, starting to panic more and more that he's going to get caught, because there's a detective asking him questions. And so the detective was the Green Joker, the Green Goblin, that actor. And they actually did it so throughout the film, he'd be...
Creepy Face McGee?
Yes. Yeah, Creepy Face. The guy...
What's his name? He's the assassin in John Wick.
So he appears to be more and more sinister to the main character. Like, he actually changes the mannerism of the acting, so he's more and more sinister. And it feels like he's getting closer and closer to how he killed someone. And his cover-up is he basically fakes information, makes it look like the guy traveled to London, the person he murdered. So, well, who knows what happened to him, but he went to London. And so the culminating scenes of the film is he's at an ATM trying to get some money. And then flashing on the ATM screen, it says, "Feed me a cat." And he reaches down, picks up a kitten, and starts trying to shove it into the machine. Then this old woman walks up, like, "What are you doing?" And he pulls a pistol out of his jacket and shoots her dead. And then he hears cop cars, and so the cops start chasing him. And so he starts running away from the cops. And he's like, anyone who's walking by him, he just kills with the gun. And he's like an expert shot with it, and he kills them. And then he starts having a shootout with the cops. And he's dodging the bullets, and he's shooting them. Then he fires his Glock, and a police car blows up and kills all the cops. And he looks at his gun in the police car, and he can't even believe what just happened. And so then he runs into the lobby of his building and kills the night watchman there with the pistol. And then he runs out of the building and kills someone else while he's running out. Then he runs into the building again, and it's identical. And he runs up to the night watchman, he signs him, then he goes up into his office because there's helicopters searching around his cop, and he sees the light of the helicopter, so he hides in his office. And then he phones his lawyer and basically tells him, I've killed all these people. I don't know how many it is, maybe 20 or 30, but I've killed them. There's this one person I killed with chainsaws, shot this old lady, just goes through the whole thing. And he's basically having a mental breakdown. And then he starts laughing about it and sort of recovers from the whole thing. He's basically leaving a message for his lawyer. And then next day comes and he wasn't caught. There should be a manhunt out for him, but it doesn't happen. And so he meets up with all of his vice president friends. And then he sees his lawyer. And he walks up to his lawyer and he's desperate to speak with him. And his lawyer's like, oh, there you are. That's a really funny joke you told me. It's like, no, it's real. It's all true. And it's like, no, you're this one guy you killed, you couldn't have killed him. And his lawyer is not even calling him by his name. He's calling him by the name of one of his associates because they all look really similar. And it's like, no, I killed this person. I did. It's like, that's simply not possible. Why is it not possible? Because I was in London and I had lunch with him twice. And this is the guy who said he went to London and he killed him. And he's like, what? And then it basically ends of, my confession is pointless. It achieved nothing and my life is misery. And I'm not unique. And so it's meant to be ambiguous. And so basically, also there's a different point where his secretary finds his notebook that he's always meant to be writing in. And it just gets more and more graphic murder scenes he's drawing in there. And so and also he comes across his murder house again because he wants to go and clean it up. And it's already being cleaned up and they're selling it. And it's like, what's going on here?
So he might have not been a psychopath at all. He might have just been desperate to be unique and different.
So there's small thoughts. So it's he's desperately unique and different. He hasn't killed anyone. He killed maybe 10 people, but it gets more and more fantastical. He
killed them all, and now has a delusion where none of it happened.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of different levels to it. But he is a psychopath. He is very cold. He snaps. He's
you noticed that
messed up.
They stopped making movies after about 2007.
Yeah,
they just started remaking the same thing, or they just throw another.
Well, there is American Psycho 2 where it's a woman who's the American Psycho. And it's no one's...
Well, it seems like a sequel ruins the whole point of what you just said.
Yeah, it did terribly as well.
But now, I wonder...
This is also based off a book.
Have movies become terrible?
Or have we run out?
No, or... No. If you could run out, we already ran out thousands of years ago.
Oh, okay.
I don't think you can run out. Because you know that line from the Bible, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yes.
It's very true. Your ghost idea is one of the common ideas of ghosts.
Yeah.
And your necromancer idea is one of the ancient mysteries, spirit, soul, body, mind. It's more, if you look at music is a great example of this, where you say, wow, they make terrible music now. But when you look at music from the 70s, you're like, look how good this was. You're looking at 10 songs of 10,000. Whereas today you're looking at 10,000 songs, and so you're going to get the terrible ones. So I wonder if good movies are still... But, well, it doesn't seem like...
I mean, there's those niche films like The Lighthouse was apparently good.
Inception.
Yeah, and the culmination of...
Marvel's whole thing was...
Yeah, without the second movie.
Yeah. But if you can't pull off the second movie, was the first one good in the first place?
I want to live in a universe where they bit the bullet and ended the MCU.
Well, what I've been thinking about how to fix it, and also not just kill all the characters.
Yeah,
it's not easy. My best thought is what you do is you say the snap that Thanos did split the universe into two, where everyone died in one, and everyone died in the other.
Yeah.
Like the other half, and the movie becomes somehow about getting a portal between the universes.
Yeah.
Without the Infinity Gauntlet, because Thanos destroys it and you can't go back in time because because they don't even follow their own time travel rules. Yeah. So get rid of that. And then the portal becomes a one-way sort of deal.
Yeah.
So it becomes Iron Man leaves through the portal, and it's very sad because he wants to... No, sorry, everyone leaves but Iron Man? I'm not sure how you do it.
Yeah.
Something like... Some people stay behind, some don't.
Yeah.
The really obvious problem there is there's no villain.
Well...
It's just like an hour of people dealing with a mess.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's an interesting movie, maybe, but it's not a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
And that would be better to just extend...
Well, you could...
Infinity War to be an extra hour long.
Well, you could even change the dealing with it is, because at the very beginning of Endgame, is they kill Thanos. It could be Thanos trying to stop them, because Shuri destroys the gauntlets, and it could be him trying to stop them to a different point. I don't know.
Yeah. Because he doesn't necessarily have to destroy the gauntlet right away.
Well, he could have even destroyed... He's still Thanos, even without the gauntlet.
Yeah. But the way they...
And if they only have half the team to fight him with, if he destroyed the gauntlet...
You have to get rid of Fat Thor.
Yeah.
You have to get rid of the battleship scene where Captain Marvel destroys the battleship.
Yeah.
You have to get rid of Captain Marvel being able to overpower Thanos.
Yeah.
You have to
get rid of the time travel.
Get rid of the time travel. You have to get rid of Fat Thor. I think you have to get rid of them killing Thanos at the start of the movie.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
And then the movie becomes about them trying to If time travel is possible, right?
Yeah.
Thanos would know. And he wouldn't rest on his laurels. He would have, just blown up the gauntlet. That wouldn't...
No.
He should have prevented time travel from being a thing and then destroyed the gauntlet.
Yeah.
They just kind of kick his character out of the way so they can have a new, less developed version of himself.
Yeah.
The Endgame was kind of terrible.
Well...
I don't know how you could save it.
You know how they deal with time travel in DC? With the Flashes?
They wipe out the universe, don't they?
Sometimes. There's also this horrifying entity, which is an undead Flash. It's the skeletal Black Flash. It's got a black uniform, and it's a skeleton. And it's... Whenever speedsters in the Speed Force do too much time traveling, these things hunt them down and murder them. And part of them murdering them is they destroy multiverses that they accidentally created. So when they grab you, the multiverses that start popping up, like the 52... they actually start getting obliterated.
The other thing that they do, though, in DC is all the universes equally exist.
Yeah.
Whereas with Marvel, they just sort of split the timeline by their own rules and then said only one of them is the good one. And
yeah.
It's the only one that you care about and counts.
And then the Loki movie messes with that whole
I actually really don't like it when Dr. McNinja did that. In the final couple Dr. McNinjas, where the original universe actually gets destroyed by the invasion of dinosaurs, I think it was. And then Dr. McNinja dies, and that's why everything goes wrong.
Yeah.
But then Dr. McNinja goes to a parallel universe where he's able to stop everything, and that's the one he lives in from then on. But it's still... The main universe is still wiped out.
Well, so there's this horrible bit of nihilism in Rick and Morty.
Yeah, where they just keep hopping universes all the time.
Yeah, but I also actually... I think it's a different story, because he's Rick C-137, and so they've identified the Rick. But I think what would be really interesting is if they actually never identified him as one of the Ricks, and so even between episode...
Oh, it's a different one.
Yeah. Because one of their goals was to not make it episodic. However, I'm happy they didn't do that, because it allows for the final episode so far of Rick and Morty that we've done to work, and that episode is amazing. I
haven't seen any Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
But
it's amazing. Uses of music, I think, is one of the best uses of music I've ever seen in any piece of media in the final bit of Rick and Morty. And whenever I try to look up, people, because they're using a popular song, semi-popular song, and they just reused it, but how they rewrote for the final scene, I try to look that up, and everyone does it wrong, because they try to add things to it, or they change things, and they don't make it identical to how they did it in the end. And how they do it in the end is just how it has to be in my mind, because...
Yeah, sometimes the song gets you.
Yeah, it's like the sorrow of the universe being released is what the sound is. And whenever someone else tries to do it, they embellish, or they use different instruments, or they put more on the choir singing. But it's this horrible, trumpets blaring to the point they're breaking. Like I can do with the flute when I make my flute really loud is when you overwhelm an instrument and you still make it play, but you make it play to its maximum. That's the trumpet sound they're doing, and it's just no one does that.
It's more than that. There's just tonality. Like these tiny little things can matter so much. So there's a song that I found which I really like by Miracle of Sound, the cover of Valhalla from Assassin's Creed.
Yeah,
I think that's they didn't write that song themselves, right?
I think they might have.
Okay, well even if they did, I saw another version which is by a singer who did a cover with them together. Yeah. So him and Miracle of Sound sang that song together, and this singer became the main singer for it. And if I had heard that version first, I wouldn't like the song because he sings it in a sort of angry metal way.
Yeah.
So it's basically all the same instruments, but instead of it being a song where the tone is one of almost like a rowing song, one of wonder, he sings it like it's more of a angry song. Like he sings it with like a the echoes of eternity. Yeah. Whoa. But the Miracle of Sound, the echoes of eternity, like it's much more. Nobody sings angry.
Yeah.
You don't get with your buddies together and go rowing and sing angry. And even if you're pillaging and killing people, you could sing Miracle of Sound song while you're killing people. Yeah. Like on the battlefield, you could be singing that. You're singing the angry song and people are, what are you, some tryhard, you weirdo?
Well, even so, Sovngarde's song has that very interesting point where he goes metal, like it becomes metal, and his singing actually is slightly angry, and he was doing a live performance and everyone's singing angrily. And it works there in that one point because the lines are literally feel berserker rage. That's what the lines are about. Like, but it's also controlled because saying control this berserker rage used as a weapon.
Right, but yeah, yes. Even if the Valhalla song had things about murder and slaughter and whatnot, what Miracle of Sound song lets you do, is want to be a Viking going out pillaging and raiding.
Yeah.
Because you feel the mythos connecting the whole thing. Yeah. You think, this is what the gods will, and I too want to do this. It makes you feel like, I could be a raider. Like, I could go killing people. It's what the gods will. It's not that I have any hatred towards them. It's just what the gods will. If you make the song angry, it becomes... So if you have a song about revenge or something, the angry might work.
Yeah.
This is a song about...
Valhalla.
Fighting for Valhalla, doing what the gods will. And that is one that invites you to wonder and mystery and be in harmony with the universe. Even though your harmony with the universe is murdering people. His song is actually so well written because it makes me want to go out and start murdering and pillaging. And it's that's not me, but you feel the pull.
And that's definitely like one of the things about
I don't want a song about an idea of Vikings. Yeah. I want a song that makes me want to be a Viking.
One of the things about the Rick and Morty song is the song's called Evil Morty's Theme, and it plays throughout every single season because there's usually at least one episode per season devoted to Evil Morty. I think there's like one where it wasn't. And this song is sinister and dark and sad and brooding, and it's what you're planning to do to knife someone in the back. That's like the song. And then for the final episode, they replay it again in that way that I described it, which is it's a song of triumph against all the odds. And so that's like something else that just makes that song so resonating. Is
the history.
Yeah, they like setting up a song to do that. I don't know if they were even planning that when they originally started writing, but they managed to have it happen. And so again, that's what makes it worthwhile for there to be different Ricks in the multiverses. It's they basically that scene and that song together, like. Without the song and without the scenes, I don't think they'd work as like it'd be so powerful in my brain.
Yeah, it's really cool when a song can use itself to empower itself. So a few examples are Howard Shore, the Elder Scrolls guy. Yeah. He does this a lot. Back in like 1989, he wrote 4 songs, and he's been cashing checks ever since. But it is different every game.
Yeah, and I mean, once you start, like, whenever Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, and we hear a variation on the theme, people are going to lose their minds.
Yeah, they're going to be like, oh, this is the song. And another series that does this really well is Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
There is Link's theme, dun, 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 And in a lot of the series, it's just there in the background. In Breath of the Wild, it's such a quiet game. When you finally hear it, it becomes this massive song of heroism.
Yeah.
You're like, and it's not even like they don't have to go crazy on the trumpet. I don't know what that instrument is. Dun, dun.
It is a trumpet.
Yeah, they don't have to go crazy on it. They just have to play it, and you're like, now I'm Link. I'm Link now.
Yeah.
I'm Link, and yeah, but like Skyrim's main theme is so powerful, but Morrowind's is so peaceful.
Yeah.
And then I think Oblivion's is even more peaceful than Morrowind's, but you have this. But even then, in the same game, in Skyrim, sometimes you'll hear the Skyrim main theme, and it's very peaceful, and then it'll change to a more intense scene where they make it much more frantic. And Ori and the Blind Forest has one song, and they do an excellent job with that one song. They turn it from being this very peaceful, beautiful song into this intense, scary song.
So
into a desperate, heartrending song.
There's an anime I recently watched the whole series, and it's basically a movie they split into 5, I think, episodes that are about 20 minutes long each. And it's called Vampire in the Garden. And I think it needed one more episode. And it's not like, oh, it needs one more episode tacked on to the end. It needs one more episode worth of space. Like, it needs about 20 more minutes, because there's a few scenes throughout the thing which you realize these were attacked by the cutting room floor because it's delayed and they didn't have time to do it, or it's just like, no, we want this to be 6 episodes of this length, and so they just cut those parts. And I think that it really suffered for that. But one of the things it does do is its music. Like, it's not so much built on itself, but it definitely hits you, and then like themes play from other parts that I recognize this song, and you can hear them again. And it's a weird anime because of the experience. Like, a lot of anime, you're like, okay, I'm reading this, I'm watching what's going on. Oh, that's a nice song. I think about a good 33% of the experience of this anime is listening to music. And part of the reason for that is music is really important to the whole plot of the story. It's one of the key cruxes, since they really focus on it. But it's like, you actually need to be listening to the music to watch the anime.
It's, I guess it's actually pretty common in movies, really. Like, if you think about Lord of the Rings, they have those moments where it's like, da-da-dun, 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 and you're like, oh, the heroes are here. Yeah. Or the Avengers has their, yeah, at that moment. And Jack Snyder's Justice League has that thing for Wonder Woman where it's like, oh, yeah, whenever she appears on screen.
Yeah, or in JoJo does this excellent job, although it gets kind of predictable, where basically it's like very prominent in Golden Wind, where Josuke, he has his theme. I played that for you. But so basically the villain's beating him up, and he's not doing so good, and he's on the back foot. It's like, oh no, how's Josuke going to get out of this one? And then suddenly the music crashes, because they designed the song to crash, and then it starts swelling. And while it's swelling, Josuke basically tells the villain, this is how you effed up, like, these are the mistakes, this is my plan. And then the music hits its crescendo, and he wins the fight. And like they sort of built on this throughout the animations of doing this. And they had like the very original guys' themes, and they sort of played whenever they're doing something epic. But they really worked in the latest seasons, like, when this guy's doing something cool, his theme is going to play, and you're like, oh, it's his theme playing, he's gonna win!
And then if you take that
and you corrupt it,
you subvert it.
Yes.
But not in the, we didn't know what to do, so we just rolled some dice and there we go, way of the Marvel and Star Wars. But you actually subvert expectations in the real artistic way, and you have something even more powerful tuned to the scene. Then that's just transcendent.
Well, that subversion is what happened with the Morty's theme. They subvert it, and it actually happens in JoJo. So,
and Lord of the Rings, when they bring it out, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. Well, so one of the subversions that is in JoJo is there's a guy who has the power to bomb time, so he can basically explode time and make it start again. And so the Jotaro, I think, I can't remember, but his theme starts playing, and then they actually invert the song because he blows up time, and so they invert this song, and then they start playing the song backwards, and you sort of get ideas. So what's really cool is a lot of times when you watch an anime, you like, oh, this is the intro, okay, they're doing an intro. But in JoJo, they actually change details in the intro, and when this guy's whole story arc starts, where he can destroy time, so they'll be playing it, they'll be playing it, they'll be playing it, and then there's an explosion, and they start playing the theme song in reverse, and they start animating everything backwards. And this song still works because of the way they wrote it. But then just that scene now, he's like, oh, he's going to beat up the villain. And then he blows up time. It's like, wait, what?
Everything goes.
And it pays off.
And there's that scene where the hobbits return to stop the scouring of the Shire, and it's like, da-da-dun, dun, dun, da-da-dun, dun, da-da-dun, dun.
They don't have that
Dun,
scene.
dun, 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 da-da-dun, dun. And they used concerning hobbits in the most epic way.
That was concerning hobbits.
Dun. Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. No. I apologize for my singing. My throat's still a mess.
I like the... Actually, the Rohirrim's theme is also a great one that they play casually, and then they can play the Rohirrim's theme. And the greatest scene of cinematography ever. What, you think I'm going to show it to you because we're friends? We're not.
Yeah, it's...
That?
music's powerful.
Yeah, also that scene's just...
In charge of the Rohirrim.
I think that's some monkey brain thing happened there. They actually had a lot of horses, and they had them charge, and they caught that on film.
I don't know if it needed to be real. I think... maybe I'm wrong,
But I think it helped a bit. But just actual cavalry charge.
I think people like having their hope validated.
Yes.
Like there's always that...
Look for me on the third day.
So there's always that hope that despite everything, the Rohirrim will ride out to aid Gondor once more.
That whole scene, though, it's... The Witch King is about to beat Gandalf on the tower side. He blew up Gandalf's staff. And Merry's there, and Merry can do nothing. And Shadowfax is even getting scared away by his mount. And then they hear the horn.
Have you read Cry of the Ice Mark?
No.
Imagine I think it's 3-book series.
Of that?
Where it's only that.
See, I don't know that would work.
It does.
Okay. But...
Because, so half the book is that. The other half is diplomacy, where they're trying to arrange these situations.
Yeah, but the horn blows, and so the Witch King has to go back to the army. So he flies back to the army, and all the orcs are sieging the city, and then they have to withdraw. And they form up ranks, and Gothmog is getting to form up ranks, and apparently Gothmog's appearance is based off Harvey Weinstein's.
Oh.
Because a lot of people in the studio really didn't like him.
Oh.
So they even knew back then. And the Rohirrim form up in their ranks, and then the king's riding along and basically like doing his thing, where he's like tapping their spearheads, and then it's like, take your men down the south line and bring your men to my banner and whatever. And then they charge and the epic music's playing. And it's just... And then when they actually hit and they change the music, like they get rid of a lot of music, and it's just the sound of horses running through orcs and then arrows hitting horses and things screaming. And that whole scene is just like, that's so epic. Then you hear the other horns playing and the Mammakills show up and they start slaughtering the Rohirrim. You're like, no, the Rohirrim, no. And then the Rohirrim get called back to their lines, so they regather. It's like, rally to me. It's like, okay, they're reforming, but they're battered. And they start managing barely to fight them.
Was Imrahil with the Rohirrim at that point, or was he somewhere else?
He was with them. Okay. And so it's like, rally me, and so they're barely fighting the Mammakills. And then it's like, oh, we were looking for reinforcements. You just showed up. And
then Aragorn comes off the ship.
Yeah, the dirty theater. And then he comes off the ship. And the wave of wraiths washes over.
That, like, smuggest smirk in all of cinema.
It's such a good look, though. Well, actually, what's ridiculous, like, Viggo Mortensen is an amazing actor, even though he only has one voice. In that scene where I'm Crow.
He has, like, the least kingly voice for... Like, how did he get to be Aragorn?
But he was.
I know, but... Every other movie, the kings have this deep, powerful voice, and then there's Aragorn with his, like...
But not this day!
This day, the courage of men will fail. But not this day.
And the age of men will come crashing down on orchids.
But maybe it makes it... The really weird thing about Lord of the Rings is it doesn't feel like fantasy while you're watching it. Yeah. Like, most movies, they look fake. It looks like a bunch of actors wearing costumes. Marvel actually does a really good job with this, too, to be fair. But... Lord of the Rings, it's like, this is just...
But that scene where they're right before the Black Gates, and the gates open up, and they cut the scene, but they kept half of it where Giftbringer shows up, and so the light is shining on their eyes, and they're blinded by the light. And then he's supposed to turn into the steel Goliath and fight them. But they cut that whole scene. So it's just a light shining from the eyes, and so basically everyone's squinting at this light and shielding it, and Aragorn's just looking into it. And then he turns to everyone and says, "For Frodo." And he just casually turns and charges an army by himself. And you're like, that's the king. And so he goes out, and then everyone's just stunned, like the king's just charging this force that's completely surrounded them. Then the two hobbits follow him. And that scene isn't comic relief. It's these two little people having such overwhelming courage that they're following the king who just left by themselves into battle, and by them doing that, that breaks the spell of the nobility of the king and allows the rest of the army to follow behind them.
I saw a movie reviewer who said Frodo is a stereotypical chosen one, and the comments were just full of everyone was just what?
Yeah.
What? No, that is the opposite of Frodo.
He is the most reluctant chosen one.
He's not a chosen one. He's just a guy that decided he'd do right.
He took the ring, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so much of the Lord of the Rings is just so...
So there's this scene in Cry of the Ice Mark, right?
Yeah.
Where you think, oh no, the Empire's not going to be able to bomb the Ice Mark people because they're too far away in their fortress. But then he gets airships. And so you're like, oh, and he's flying over with his airships. And he's bombing all the Ice Mark people. But then vampires land on his ship and they start killing all the heroic Empire people.
Are you doing this from the perspective of the Empire?
and then the king of the vampires, but then the Emperor's own ship.
Let me just... isn't the theme for Cry of the Ice Mark basically the Star of Shrek?
What?
Alright, so Shrek starts with King Folstis, Lord Farquaad.
Farquaad,
Yeah, Lord Farquaad has cleared out the enchanted forest and he's killing all magic creatures because they're silly, and he wants a kingdom of order without magic.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Same plot, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
yeah, basically the same story.
Okay, so... But the Emperor's ship has his elite bodyguards.
Yeah.
And so they're actually fighting off the vampires. And it's like, oh, the Emperor's... They're fighting. But then, the Vampire King lands on the vampire ship. And this dude is ridiculous. He's like teleporting around, he's stabbing, he kills like all the Emperor's bodyguard in no time. And the Emperor's forced to draw his own sword. And the Emperor's just a man. The Emperor is the best fighter in the world. And so he's holding his own against the Vampire King. Turns out the Vampire King wasn't even trying. Vampire King kicks him down, has a sword at the Emperor's neck. And if the Emperor dies, the whole invasion fails, everything fails. And the Ice Mark will win, and you're like, oh. And the Emperor says, and the Vampire King says to the Emperor, any last words? And the Emperor just looks at him calmly. And he says, fire. And then all the grape shot cannons on the ship have been pointed inwards, and they rake across the decks, and they tear the Vampire King to shreds, killing him, because he's like nearly indestructible.
Yeah.
But he's just torn to pieces by grape shot. And the entire vampire family is wiped out. And you're just like, that is the coolest, like, one-liner ever. The Emperor is the bad guy.
Yeah,
but
you're doing it from the perspective of the Empire.
Because it's the coolest one-liner ever. It's like, any last words? Fire.
And because he's on the ground, he's in position to not get hit.
Yeah, he doesn't get hit. And you're just like, that was so cool.
Yeah, it's basically veterinary.
Yeah. No, the Emperor is amazing. There's a line from the books, it's about his son, but it's always stuck with me. It's arrogant hand on arrogant hip. Like, apparently all of his children are the same. They all just ride like he does, with arrogant hand on arrogant hip.
Yeah. There's... On the thing of the Emperor and the Vampire King being the best, there's this great scene, I can't remember what it's from, but basically this guy walks up to, like, he's fought through all the bodyguards. Like, all the guardsmen, I guess. And he shows the king, and he draws his weapon, and the king's there, and he's sitting on his throne. And he's like, basically challenges the king to the duel. And it's like, I've beaten all your men. He's like, you can't be much better than them. He's like, I'm a terrible swordsman. That's why I have him. And then this giant knight basically shoulder checks the hero, and he goes flying. And the king's like awful at fighting, but his bodyguard is the best fighter in the world.
So the Ice Mark actually, they keep losing all their commanders because so the Ice Mark isn't actually mythical creatures. They're just kingdom.
Yeah.
And the Empire doesn't believe in mythical creatures. They think it's superstitious nonsense. And so they're coming to conquer the Ice Mark, and the Ice Mark is making an alliance with supernatural creatures.
Yeah.
But the Ice Mark is like the sort of barbarian honor-based kingdom.
Yeah.
And so they keep losing all these fights because they might win a skirmish and then their commander dies because he was leading the charge.
Yeah.
And they think the Empire's cowards because all their commanders stand at the back. But they just keep... They win every skirmish, but they slowly lose as they lose all their commanders.
And so there's the interesting perspective there of that mix. However, there's the story of Caesar.
Yeah,
in that fight,
him charging forward
and like
rallied his people.
Yeah, well, rallying different spots and like wherever the fighting was, like they're losing, he'd run to them and help them fight there, and he'd like bring it together. And there's also the symbol of a king, of your leader is actually charging, and like rally to me and follow the king's banner, and that's where the king is everyone's going to charge to keep the king alive. And so where the king is a very important, like the king will go to a very important part of the battle, then everyone who's telling to rally to him is like, you're the king's group of soldiers. You have to get there because the king is fighting and you don't want him to die.
You know, this is related. A lot of modern fiction is lacking heroism. And it's, I don't know if it's a symptom of society's downfall or it's causing society's downfall. But there is a very common scene in modern books and movies, like in the last 10, 15 years, which is where the villain will say, if I tell you this, will you let me go? And the hero says yes. And then the villain reveals the thing. And then the hero throws him off a building or kills him or something like that. That's a very common scene. Which gives you no real hero to root for.
Yeah.
And it's something that happens a lot. And while I was thinking, Ice Mark has a similar scene. But it actually does it, I think, right. Mm-hmm. Because the villain still gets killed. But it's not that same, like, will you let me go if I say? It's not like that at all.
Well, there's also a scene like that in Lord of the Rings, where they're saying to Saruman, come down from there and talk with us. And he goes, no.
Actually, he doesn't. He says, yes, we can talk like reasonable men. Come up here, yes, Gandalf. And...
No, Saruman, come down.
And everyone listening feels like, oh, Saruman, he's in the right. It's just him and Gandalf. They're beings on another level. They got to talk it out. And we'll just...
Your voice is sour. And your tongue is that of a snake.
What is Gandalf even... He's got a scary presence. And, like, he's decent at sword fighting. But, like, Saruman can convince anyone of anything.
There's actually something interesting, which is Gandalf didn't do a lot of magic because he was veiled. Because if he does magic, then Sauron's going to do magic.
Saruman just kind of... Well, Saruman doesn't go full bore, but he does a lot.
He doesn't
like,
do
he talks.
Yeah.
And he, like...
And he throws a fireball.
Does he? Does he even throw a fireball?
No, he doesn't even, actually, no.
He does in the game.
And in the movie. Right. In the extended clip. No, he didn't throw... He just throws the orb of... No, Wormtongues throws the orb of Orc thing.
No,
he just speaks at them.
He makes the orc high.
Yeah.
That's probably his biggest thing of magic. And his talking.
Yeah, and his spies, his ravens.
Aren't those Denethor's?
No, the ravens are his.
Oh. No, they're Sauron's, maybe, even.
No, the ravens are his. Bats and stuff, but he has his own ravens as well.
Denethor... No, Denethor is omniscient.
Yeah, he just sees further than other men.
Well, that's not fair. How come even Sauron needs, like, ravens and bats, but Denethor can just, like...
Well, he has to be on a very high tower to do that.
And I guess
that's like
Sauron kind of does that when he's looking for Frodo.
That's the whole... So Orthanc, Minas Tirith, and Minas Ithil, why they're so high up is, like those points, they're very top towers. So the White Tower, the Tower of Minas Ithil, and Orthanc, is when you're at the top of them, and if you're a wizard or one of the wise, they see farther.
I mean, duh.
No, but that's part, but they actually, they can cast their vision afar and see other places. And then, of course, having...
Well, the Palantir helps.
Yeah, helps a lot.
Because I don't think Sauron ever lied to Denethor.
No, he
just showed him his armies.
Yep.
That's all he did.
Well, he showed him his armies in, like, the best condition. Like, you have, like, your military propaganda. Yeah. And it's like, look how proficient our trebuchets are. And you show the trebuchets. And then you zoom out and you show a massive army of orcs, all with their trebuchets. But it turns out there's like 10 good trebuchets, and then the rest of them are cardboard cutouts, so it's zoomed out.
Well, even if they're real, right?
Yeah.
All Denethor has to do is show him the scene where what is it, like 40 fighting Uruk-hai brag about winning a 40-1 fight against
his son.
They don't even know Boromir's special. They just say, we fought
the man of Gondor.
So Uruk-hai are elite. They aren't normal orcs. and they're proud about winning a 40-1 fight. Or 100-1, whatever it is.
Also, something else to be said about that scene is Boromir was fighting to defend Merry and Pippin while blowing his horn.
Yeah,
to rally defenders.
So
that fight, Boromir slays 40 Orcai. He's blowing a horn, trying to defend two
I don't know if he killed any Orcai, did he? Oh yeah, there's a bunch of bodies. Yeah.
Yeah, he killed a ton of them.
Yeah.
And he was ridiculously outnumbered.
And they consider it a total victory.
I hate this joke, which is it shows like the scene in the movie where he like gets shot with arrows, and it's pointing out the massive shield on his back. So in the song of Boromir, the Lament of Boromir, his cloven shield, his shield was cut in half, and so was his horn. He blew so hard on it exploded.
And
then Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli killed like 100 orcs.
But imagine if the Orcai thought he was like an like I assume Boromir isn't an average.
He's a captain.
Yeah, like I assume he's. Do you think he's equal to like Éomer?
Yes.
Or do you think Éomer's on another level?
Which one was Éomer?
Éomer is the nephew of Theoden.
Oh no, he's above Éomer.
You think so?
Yeah, Éomer is just a Rohirrim.
Right, but Éomer, Imaldris, and Aragorn were all untouched by the fighting.
Yes, but he's just a Rohirrim.
Imaldris, whatever his name is, the Shining Prince.
Yeah,
because Aragorn and the Shining Prince are the two best human fighters, I think.
So there's the half-elf prince. That's
Imrahil, I think. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, he's on the level of Imrahil. I thought you were talking about the Rohirrim Lord, the brother of White Snow, the nephew of King Theoden. I thought you were talking about
like Faramir, or
no, the nephew of King Theoden.
Yeah, Éomer.
Yeah, there's Éomer, and there. Oh, was Éomer also untouched?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think Éomer's a pretty big hero as well, but I think him and Boromir are probably on the same level.
Because, like, Imraldis doesn't. They don't even touch him, and I think Imraldis and Aragorn are the two best human fighters. Unless Denethor might be better than them.
No, Aragorn was the best.
You think?
Yeah.
Because Denethor and Shadowfax are weird. They're not just supposed to be. They're supposed to be good for the old times, right?
Yeah.
Like they're supposed to be the last gasp of the old blood, basically.
Yeah.
Imagine if they'd stuck Denethor on Shadowfax.
Well, see, Denethor though is a steward, whereas Aragorn is the last gasp of the king's lines. Like, because his ancestors, they actually started like dying much, much younger, where he lived quite a long time. And
yeah.
Although, I mean, yeah, the men of Gondor, like the true men of Gondor, are also all pretty scary, and they're fighting orcs, not Orcai. So.
But to be fair to Denethor, even if he thought the Rohirrim would join him, even if he thought the people of Woses would join him, which
they did
very unlikely. Well, they kind of did. They teleported the
they took the trail of the Woses. Yeah.
Even if the Hillmen joined him, which they didn't, they joined Saruman. Even if they had Saruman on their side, they might still have lost without
the ghosts.
The ghost men. And the ghost men, like, who knew about that?
Yeah, well, the ghost men. But even then, even after all of that was said and done, there was still more forces in Mordor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mordor didn't even lose its armies.
Yeah, and there were still the Easterlings that were coming. And there are still more pirates to come. That was him starting to show his hand. Because, basically, if he started showing his hand sooner, the elves would have stuck around.
Well, the problem is, every time you attack, you move the token down one.
I'm not talking about the board game, but
the board game is the...
Yeah, it's very accurate. But the elves were starting to leave. But if he showed his hand too soon, the elves might have stuck around a little longer. And he could have... Like, there's... Christopher Tolkien talks about the battles of the dwarves. Like, he could have rallied the dwarves into actual armies instead of them defending their homes. And the elves could have done more. And the further armies of men could have gathered. And still, he outnumbered them, but he didn't want to, like, jump the gun. And what's even more is if Sauron gets too big for his pants, then he will have, like, a Nuvatar show up and slap him.
Which he already did once before.
Yeah, he really doesn't want that to happen.
When he tried to conquer the Isle of the Blessed. What's it called in the Lord of the Rings?
I can't remember.
But it's... there's something very weird about Ireland, specifically. There's Tir na Nog.
Yeah.
There's Great Ireland. There's
Avalon.
Iorla. There's Avalon, I guess. There's the West Island. Ireland has like 7 mythical islands to the west. And then there's Brazil. I think that's an Irish one as well. Brazil is like this mythical island to the west. And then the Greeks have the mystical island to the west, which is called the Isle of the Blessed.
Yeah.
Which is the one where the people in Elysium can go to.
Yeah. It's not Gondolin. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember the name of the island. It's not Gondolin, though.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, he tried to conquer that. Well, he didn't. He convinced the king of the Numenorians to conquer it.
But I'm just saying, he doesn't want the Golden Host to show up and to purge Middle-earth. Even though they probably wouldn't. Like, that's what Gandalf and the wizards are there for, is to try and influence it because they don't want too much. But if he'd, like...
He might not be able to.
Yeah.
Like, the wizards were limited.
Well, that's why Gandalf the White was sent. Is he was sent back to complete his task unveiled.
But, because I think Sauron's probably might be stronger than Sauron.
Sauron?
Yeah.
No.
Because Sauron's the strongest of the wizards, I think.
Yes, but Sauron's on a different level than him.
Sauron?
Yeah, Sauron's on...
I don't know if he is. Like, if
is.
Sauron was going full out, I don't know. Like, if he wasn't a wizard, if he just went full Maya mode, I think he might be Maya mode.
Not with the One Ring.
Alright, I guess, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. No, wait, Sauron was able to beat all the other Maya except for the shapeshifter dude.
Yeah.
The other shapeshifter. Because he's the shapeshifter dude.
Yes.
But the fighter one, the bear dude.
Yeah.
Werewolves versus vampires.
Well, he had both on his side. Is bears versus werewolves and vampires.
Right. Manwë.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah, Manwë is the greatest, and then Sauron.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So Saruman's not then.
Yeah. No. Manwë.
Saruman's the greatest of the wizards.
Yeah. Manwë or a Nuvatar show up, and then Sauron's got the problem.
Well, Eru can't join in.
Yeah. I'm not saying Eru. I'm saying Nuvatar.
Eru Iluvatar. That's his name, isn't it?
Iluvatar. Yeah. A Nuvatar is a different. No. Yeah. You're right there. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. It's confusing. He has 3 names.
Oh wait, Manwë might not be a Maya. Manwë might be a Valar.
Yeah. He is a Valar.
And what's the name of the Maya?
I can't remember.
It's too common.
Actually, interestingly enough, though, Aragorn and the person he marries, one of their ancestors was a Maiar.
How?
So sorry. So there's the god, there's the lesser gods, then there's
the Valar.
Yeah, then there's the Maiar.
Yeah.
So, Tunuviel's mother was the Maiar of the forest that the Elven King lived in. And so she's actually half Maiar. And so that's how she could sing a song that would put even Sauron to sleep. Well, not Sauron, sorry. She sang a song that put Melkor to sleep. She beat Sauron in their song battle because she showed up and rescued him, and then her song put Melkor to sleep.
Wow.
Nerd.
No, I think it's fascinating. It's really interesting. The more I learn about Irish and British mythology, he really did just take it. Like, even Eru is the name of, like, a Irish spirit or something. Like it's all... That letter where he said, I wanted a thing uniquely British, that's what he did. He just took everything and, like...
Well, some people talk... there's a German ring, which some people compare to the One Ring.
Wagner's ring is about... Sigurd's ring,
which turns into 7 rings,
which he took from Fafnir. The Ring of Fafnir. That's what it's called. Yeah,
it turns into 7 rings.
The Ring of Invisibility.
No, sorry, it's a different ring. So this is from a German opera that takes 3 days to complete.
Isn't that Wagner's ring cycle?
No,
that's an opera.
Okay, yeah. Anyways, the ring can turn into 7 different rings. So every single day, it turns into 7 rings.
And that's based on the Ring of Gyges.
Yeah. But some people say, oh, did he just steal that? And a scholar said, they're both round, unadorned rings. After that, they're completely different.
But I do think he probably...
used some of those ideas.
He was the translator for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Tolkien had a job.
Yes.
And he translated a lot of the Old Norse stuff. So...
his lecture hall only had standing room. He was so popular.
But he
like, this guy wasn't just a good writer.
He was very purposely creating a myth based on myths, which is how myths are made.
Yes.
I was reading some first sources about... because I was worried that we had just taken the Isle of the Blessed from Percy Jackson.
Yeah.
I was concerned about that. And my initial search, I couldn't find anything. I was like, oh, great, what did we just do? But then I found the poems of Pindar, the Olympian. He wasn't an Olympian. The poems are called the Olympians.
Yeah.
And in the second Olympian poem, he talks about how you have to go through life 3 times without ever faltering, which you could interpret as successfully making it to Elysium each time.
Yeah.
Because to get to Elysium there's something like it wasn't good enough to do only good, you had to do no evil or something. I can't remember. Anyways. No, but Hercules became a god, so you can do evil, obviously.
Why is Elysium so awful then?
No, Elysium's great. It's like this paradise.
Conquest of Elysium?
Oh, yeah. Well, they're wrong, obviously, about it.
Well, they're combining all myths.
Yeah, about it being Elysium.
There's actually a magic item which gives you gold, which is a ring you put on, and then it turns into 7 rings, and so it's one of the magic items you can forge in that game that gives you gold.
So, he says if you do it 3 times and you go to the Isle of the Blessed, where King Bahamdroid, whatever his name is, lives in. And then there's also the story, a true story, where a man sails out with his friends past the gates of Hercules to the Isle of the Blessed, and then travels to the moon, and there is a war between the people of the moon and the people of the sun over the morning star. And so they have this big fight, and then the people of the sun win by covering the moon in trees to block out its light, and then they return home.
True story.
It's called The True Story. Yeah, it's an ancient Greek work by a guy that was just sick of the Greek myths. He's like, these are all obviously lies, and I'm going to write my own Greek myth, and it's going to be called The True Story, because at the start of it, I will say this is all a lie, and so it'll be the most honest of all of them. It's really interesting when you read the first sources, anyways, as I was getting to, of the Greek myths, because they're all different. Like, it's more like DC making up a bunch of different backgrounds for Batman. Like, nobody agrees with each other.
Yeah.
They're all just they're all just spitballing. And when you say, oh, I read the Greek myths, it's like, there isn't a Greek myth. It's just, do you want to read Homer? Do you want to read... I mean, Homer's the safest bet. But there's Pindar, there's, like, people that said, oh, no, Homer got this bit wrong. It's actually like this.
There's that insane guy who lived in between a temple of Jupiter on the mountainside and then the town that worshipped Mars, and he lived in between the two of them, and he built his own temple to a different god that no one else ever had, and he said, this is the true king of the gods. And then the priests from both temples came and attacked his temple, and while they were attacking his temple, they ended up killing each other, and a bunch of his works survived, even though he didn't. It's this ridiculous little bit of Roman history.
So they were playing Tigris and Euphrates, and he placed a temple between their two kingdoms.
Yes.
Bam.
Yes.
I mean, that is how you play Tigris and Euphrates, just pow. So, in other words, Rick Riordan is canon as far as I'm concerned, because everyone else was just making it up and saying, "Oh, God told me." So, I mean,
okay,
yeah, I gotta stop there. Yeah.